Taste me how to dud. Taste me how to dud. Taste me how to dud. Taste me how to dud.
Everybody love me. Everybody love me. Everybody love me. You ain't messing with my Dougie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Parkscope Unprofessional Podcast Hour. Man, it's snowing here. Oh boy. Oh,
It's horrible outside.
yeah, it's just garbage. It is so bad. My name is Joe. Joining us tonight is Alan. Alan, how are you doing?
I am alive somehow.
You are alive. You are
alive.
in the United States. You are hanging out. You're sleeping. Crazy schedules. All sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah, things have occurred. That's for sure.
Yes. Also joining us tonight is Mr. Andrew Hyde. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I mean, it didn't snow here, and it got up into the high 60s, which after the last few days is pretty good. So, yeah.
Yeah, we have some weird thing where tonight the temperature's plummeting to like 12 degrees or something. Like Friday, it's going to be a low of 10. So it's just garbage everywhere. Anyway, enough about our weather musings. We're all talking about trip reports now. I think that's the best way to put it. Alan, you went to the Middle East.
Yeah.
Andrew, you went to Europe a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't very total theme park related, but I did do a couple theme park things. So, yeah.
So, Alan, do you want to lead us off, start and talk about what you saw in the Middle East?
Yeah, so I was out there for over 2 weeks. It's the longest trip I've taken in about 15 years. And we planned it like starting about 10 months ago. And, everything just kind of got pieced together. Myself and my wife, and then our occasional co-conspirator, Mr. Zane Barefoot, who came along with us on many an adventure in the desert.
Which is funny because I somewhat know Zane. I think me and him were in a few classes down here at UCF. And the name sounds very familiar, and I feel like we have many mutual acquaintances.
You have many.
Very likely so. Yeah, it was funny because, I talked to a bunch of people, and I was like, y'all ought to come out with us to the Middle East. It's going to be great. And, everybody was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's so scary. It's so sketchy. It's so crazy. And Zane was he was like, yep, I'm done. I'm in. I don't care. I'll do it. And so it was nice because we had somebody else to occasionally bounce stuff off of. And, in this trip, this time around, I basically didn't do any of the water parks. He did all the water parks. So I'll speak for him quickly, since, I'm sure he's up to no good in Las Vegas now that he's back home finally. He had a long round-the-world trip for himself. But he did Atlantis, he did Wild Wadi, and he did Yas Water World. I did Wild Wadi and Yas Water World in 2015 when I was first out there, and I thought very highly of both, but I thought more highly of Wild Wadi. And I know that he basically thought the same way about those two parks, and then thought that Atlantis was better than both of them. And I think his specific statement to me about Atlantis is that it's everything the Volcano Bay wanted to be. And it's the best water park in the world, basically. And so that's not terribly surprising. That part of the world, the water parks in Dubai and Abu Dhabi are just over the top. I mean, they're fantastic. And, that doesn't shock me at all. I really love Wild Wadi. Anyone who's never seen pictures of the Master Blaster setup that they have at Wild, I mean, to go from something like the Orlando water parks where you have Crush and Gusher that has 2 or 3 uphill sections, to the setup that's at Wild Wadi that goes on for 7 minutes and goes all around the park, and has 3 different branches that come off. It's just completely insane.
It's more like a lazy river than it is a roller coaster Master Blaster kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean it leads to other attractions and the lazy river itself, and it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal item, and there's something somewhat similar at Atlantis, where they have a lazy river with conveyor belts, and that leads to Master Blaster slides and concrete chutes and stuff like that. So, again, the water parks there are all super finely manicured. I know some people complain about the potential of seeing the outside world from Volcano Bay, which of course you can also do it at Blizzard Beach. If you stand on the top of it, you can see the McDonald's. but everybody just ignores that fact. But Wild Wadi, I mean, yeah, technically, I guess you could go and see the Burj Al Arab next door because it's 1,000 feet tall. But aside from that, and that's not exactly an everyday thing. Like, I don't think most people would find the Burj Al Arab some sort of intrusive item that looks ugly, but rather it's pretty freaking fantastic and insane. So anyways, we didn't do the water parks except for Legoland Water Park at Dubai Parks and Resorts, which we went to and did everything at and stayed on property. It's my second on-property theme park stay of the year, which, of course, very traditional for me to go to the on-property stay, in this case, Port Aventura this year and Dubai Parks. And then we also did Ferrari World. We were there quite a bit around the time of the Grand Prix in Abu Dhabi, which we also attended. And we also went to IMG Worlds of Adventure, which is another huge indoor theme park in Dubai. And we went to a bunch of other things that, often fall under the radar, quite honestly, from theme park fans, which are either as big or in many ways bigger in terms of attendance than those. So the stuff like HubZero, which is a brand new indoor facility that's in Dubai near the City Walk Mall that not many people know exists, but it's definitely there, and we definitely did it, and there's stuff in it. And a whole host of what those in the coaster hobby like to call credit whoring stops with really small, like mall coasters is the way I would term those places.
Like literally in a mall. Just like
literally in a mall. So, which park do you want to talk about first? What rides do people want to
Well, so what about, I can remember, have you been to Abu Dhabi or Dubai before, or was this your first visit over there?
Yeah, I went in 2015. My wife and I were there for just a couple of days, 3-4 days before we went to Singapore. So we did this big crazy trip where we flew to Dubai. We were there for a few nights. We went to Ferrari World. We went to Yas Water World. We went to Wild Wadi. Went to, at that time, Sega Republic was still open over at the Dubai Mall. So we did all that stuff. And then we flew to Singapore and we went to Universal. We did a cruise out of there for 7 nights. So we'd been to this area before, and that's why we felt really comfortable with it. And, it's really, there's nothing that's like Dubai and Abu Dhabi and the UAE in the world. I should mention too, we didn't just go to the UAE. We went to Oman on this trip.
And and according to your cell phone, you went to Iran too, right? that was the best tweet you had.
Yeah, that was weird. So one thing I'll throw out to people that travel internationally frequently is if you don't spend a couple bucks, even if it's just on a cheap unlocked Chinese-made cell phone like what I've got from Blue. You can buy them on Amazon. Mine's a pretty decent cell phone. It's almost one of those faux tablets because it's so freaking big. Costs $130, but whenever you get to anywhere in the world, you just buy a SIM chip for the thing, and it's usually fairly nominal price. I think I probably paid $50-ish, maybe $60-ish in the UAE, and I had 20 minutes of calling, which who cares because I didn't make any calls. I had 20 text messages. Again, I don't really need to make text messages, but I had 10 gig of data to use for a 2-week period.
Man, you can't even get that in the U.S. for a month.
Exactly, yeah. And then the thing was that the only problem is that with that tourist plan in the UAE, they don't allow you to roam. So when I got to Oman, I ended up offline with maps for a little while. And I'll get to that too. And we got a SIM card there it was hilariously cheap. It was two Omani Rial to get 2 gig of data and a SIM card. And I was like, really? So basically $6. And that was more than enough for the 2 days that we were out there in order to use that for mapping and sending emails and things like that. So, like I said, I think that, and it's really easy. I mean, especially out there, some places you have to go seek out where to get a SIM card when you arrive internationally. And I've gotten SIM cards now in 6 countries. So, it may not always be in the airport, but in the UAE, before you get in a taxi cab, before you leave the airport, there's desks for Etisalat and Do. We got Do as our provider. And, you walk up there, they'll sell you the SIM chip, they'll put it in your phone, and they'll get everything set up so that you are online with your phone before you're even on your way to your hotel. And I can't recommend it enough. Totally the way to go, in my opinion.
Cool. Get your burner phone so you can throw them away when the feds find out, right?
Yeah, just toss it in the ocean. And it won't be any different than anything else. But anyways, so I guess what I was getting at here is, so when I still had the Omani SIM chip in, and that did allow me to roam, which was funny. And as our ship left port and started heading back towards the UAE, apparently we were closer to the towers in Iran than we were the ones in Oman, which made sense because we actually ended up getting buzzed by an Iranian helicopter. Like, really close. Like, the helicopter, came so close that we could see faces of the people in their naval helicopter, and they waved at us, and we waved back.
Okay, so it was friendly.
Yeah. It was cool. I mean, afterwards, it was like, is that what I thought it was? And then you go online, and you're like, what does the Iranian, naval or Air Force, what does their symbols look like? Yeah, that was an Iranian helicopter. Okay, that's cool. That the odds of them attacking a cruise ship in that part of the world are pretty minimal, because even though, there's the perception that Americans have that we are always on all the cruise ships, and that, we do everything and we're always a target at all times. We honestly are not. Mm-hmm. The people that are going to be on a cruise somewhere like that are European, primarily British, and we don't even matter. We're barely a blip on the radar out there. So, the reality, you're just never a target. No one even realizes that you're American, honestly.
Until you open your mouth, yeah.
Everyone's like, are you from New Zealand? I'm like, no, I'm not.
From Michigan.
Close to it. Yeah, this is not even remotely similar to a New Zealand accent, but thank you for thinking that.
New Zealand.
All places. I was like, I got that a lot. Some Australia, some Great Britain. Never Canada or the U.S., because just the odds that they would see a Canadian there, especially some of the places that we went to, is so preposterously low. Mm-hmm. It's non-existent. Why would you be there if you're an American? But naturally, those were the places that we ended up at quite often. So anyways, what park do we want to talk about first? We got a bunch. Boy, do we have tons.
So, I mean, the one thing that stood out to me was, I think, another tweet you put out. You said, and I forget, I should have pulled this up, but maybe this will lead into a park that you might want to talk about first. Is you put out something that was like, for anyone, on Twitter who, bashes the parks over here, doesn't realize how good they are until they actually come here, or something along those lines. Maybe what park was that kind of referring to? Because I know a lot of backlash kind of came out from people who watch POVs, poorly recorded POVs or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was primarily to MotionGate. A lot of people, when they first opened, almost nothing was available for shooting. Nothing was running. So a lot of people saw the POVs of Ghostbusters. And I'll be honest, Ghostbusters is not good. I stayed away from the POVs because I didn't know what I was going to, find when I got there. And of the interactive dark rides that I rode when I was out there, and good Lord, did I have a whole bunch of shooting dark rides to go on. Ghostbusters was easily in the lower 25th percentile. It was not a good ride. And so I could understand the criticism there. Hotel Transylvania, we thought was great. We thought that was a fantastic ride. The Smurf Studios ride is a bizarre ride. It probably did not need a trackless system for it. But, it was okay. But basically, those were the three rides everybody saw the POV from when the park opened, because stuff was still being built. And, of course, now, it's pretty much done as a theme park. So to go see it, it's to actually see the park in its sort of finished state. And you see the attractions that are really good at those parks. And MotionGate especially, because the stuff that's in the DreamWorks section, the stuff that's in there, first of all, it's fantastic inside. It's an incredible building. All the DreamWorks stuff is indoors, and they did an expert job of hiding the show buildings for that, because you walk in and you're like, okay, this is a very nice fountain, and then there's like a center hub with this fountain that has all the DreamWorks characters on it, and then like shops on either side of that, and then there's doors that lead to each of the different movies or franchises that you can explore. So there's How to Train Your Dragon, Shrek, Madagascar, and Kung Fu Panda, and each one of them is a huge space. It's a really huge and really ornate and really well-themed space. And unfortunately, the ride, it's a simulator ride that's over at Kung Fu Panda called Unstoppable Awesomeness, I think, was tragically stopped, and apparently has been stopped for quite some time. But Madagascar has a really, really good indoor roller coaster in it. And then you've got this trackless dark ride in Shrek that is outstanding. And then there's the Mac-powered inverted coaster, same system as Arthur at Europa Park, for How to Train Your Dragon, which is probably, one of, if not the best attraction in the Middle East as far as themed rides go.
Really?
And it's one of the best in the world as far as I'm concerned. And just fantastic stuff that nobody talks about. Nobody discusses it. I've never heard, nobody's ever told me like, oh yeah, How to Train Your Dragon is freaking great. Like I think Zane said that he had Shrek and How to Train Your Dragon as like top 10 rides in the world.
Wow.
And, they're there and nobody talks about it. Nobody. So I guess I should describe the rides a little bit, right? Because
that'd be helpful, yeah.
Things. So Ghostbusters is it's themed more or less to the original Ghostbusters. So there's pictures of all the original Ghostbusters guys. Like there's you got your Peter Venkman 4-foot mural and stuff like that. And basically the idea is like there's you get spoken to by Bob, who's like an Indian Ghostbuster. This is a good piece. This is a good quick moment for me to quickly divert a little bit and kind of describe some things about the sociological nature of the Middle East, the UAE in particular. So the UAE obviously has oil, and their primary business partner ever since they discovered oil is India. So there's a lot of there are a lot of Indians working in the country of the UAE. There are a lot of tourists that come from India. Pretty much everybody was on our flight to Abu Dhabi from Chicago. Instead of going to Abu Dhabi, ended up transferring there to get on flights to go to India, where there was like Cochin or Chennai or Mumbai, or they have like 30 different stops from ETS. So both Dubai and Abu Dhabi's airports are major hubs to transfer to get into India. So there's a huge relationship that exists there. So, it's funny to see Bob, the Indian Ghostbuster, giving you your pre-show information. The ride itself, the vehicles, I think, pretty much they're all identical. Every shooting dark ride, with the exception of Cholet that we went on, had basically this, and the one at Antics Land, had the same vehicle where it has 5 seats, 3 guns in the front, 2 in the back, stadium seating. I'm sure it's all made by, I think it's like Logotronics. I think they did all the dark ride, like guns and everything that's in the UAE, and that's appeared in the last 3 years. And so basically everything's identical in that aspect. And it's a trackless dark ride. The problem is that when you come up to each of the individual screens to shoot, so it's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like Toy Story in that respect, where you come to a screen and basically you freeze in front of the screen and shoot things, and then you move to another screen. Not very much in the way of practical effects in between. Like the screens are just kind of frozen in place, and then you get there and you do stuff, and then the screen freezes back to its previous state. So it's not like it doesn't really flow very well. Like you'll see a bunch of like frozen ghosts just sitting on the screen, and then it's almost like you go to a video game and it's on pause, and you get to 8 individual video game screens, and then every time you park in front of it, somebody presses the start button, and you're allowed to shoot everything. And then when it's done, they press the start button again, and then it resets to where you were before. So it's not, I hate to bring up it's definitely not immersive. It's just, it's there. It's okay. So from there, you go to Hotel Transylvania, which is a really big trackless dark ride. And I would suggest, if people see the POV of it, I haven't looked at one. Maybe it's complete, but it's all animatronics. Very few video screens in the ride compared to the amount of animatronics and practical things that are moving. And most of the ride takes place in this huge hallway that has little rooms that jut off to the sides of it on the right and left. And so the whole room is just cars just swirling around each other going into the different rooms. And you see, one scene with different characters, another scene with different characters, and this scene and this scene and this scene. And then there's the kind of this end scene that brings you back around to the entrance area where you pass through this like bar where the Johnny character is playing with a band of monsters for his girlfriend or wife or whatever it is, Mavis, and your dad Dracula. And then you go through the town, and then you get back to the load station. And I was really impressed with it. I understand that when we talk about trackless dark rides, everybody talks about, like, wow, there's a lot of interaction between the vehicles on Pooh and Mystic Manor. But, I don't know what those rides do that Hotel Transylvania doesn't, because there's literally like 10 vehicles in the room constantly swirling around one another in what look like a regular pattern. I mean, eventually you pick up that, it does the same thing every time, but I thought it was really cool. Go to the Smurf Studios dark ride, which is over there. It's another trackless dark ride. I don't want to say it breaks the fourth wall too much, but it's a decent dark ride for the Smurfs. It's kind of ridiculous, but it knows it's ridiculous. Like, the premise is that you are there as the Smurfs shoot a film, and they have like 30 like Smurf film posters everywhere for like popular films that they insert the Smurfs into. Kind of like I think Muppet Vision may do something similar.
Yeah, the Muppet Vision does that.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same premise as that, and of course it's wacky, and Gargamel and whatever the cat's name is try to interfere, and it's cute. It's nothing spectacular. But it's fine. And quite honestly, like, it's no better or no worse than most of like the Fantasyland dark rides. Like, it's that kind of level of ride, If anything, it's better because it has like a contiguous theme and a story that makes sense, rather than requiring you to have some great knowledge of the movie beforehand, so that any of it, the 90s, basically the movie in 90 seconds makes sense. The other stuff that's over in that area, there's a Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs rafting ride. Mm-hmm. A lot of the effects were turned off because it's cool by Dubai standards. It was like high of 75 or high of 77 when we were at Dubai Parks. There is a Gerstlauer coaster themed to the Green Hornet, of all things. Huh. And it's not particularly good. It looks a little unfinished, like it was supposed to go in a box, and then they never built the box.
Okay.
And honestly, one thing about Dubai Parks, too, is like a lot of the stuff doesn't open with the park at 11 o'clock. A lot of the rides, quote-unquote, open at 12 noon instead. And what really happens at 12 noon is the crew shows up to start working. So the rides that open at 12 noon, which is basically everything that's not Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and Green Hornet, doesn't actually start running until about 12:30 or 1. And then the same thing happens with the DreamWorks stuff, because that doesn't even open until 1 o'clock. So the rides there don't actually open until like 1:30 or 2. So if you bother going before about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, eating a mediocre lunch, and riding Green Hornet.
How late's the park open till?
So the park hours right now for the winter are Legoland, because there's a Legoland park as part of Dubai Parks and Resorts. They open from 10 to 8 or 10 to 6, depending on the day. Then MotionGate was open from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Okay. And then the Bollywood Park was open from 4 to midnight. Huh. So, and luckily, the other major thing about the Middle Eastern parks is nobody goes to them. There will be people that occasionally online try to tell you otherwise, but no, nobody goes to these parks. I mean, their attendance is way below what they expected to, so it's really easy to park hop and super easy to ride everything. So It to me, it almost feels like one contiguous theme park, even though I know it's 3 separate gates plus a water park gate. Going back to MotionGate a little bit, though, there is like a junior roller coaster as well over in the Smurf area, and there's a bunch of these play areas. One of them has like you get to talk with one of the Smurfs, kind of like a Crush's the Crush thing that's at Epcot.
Yeah,
where you talk to Crush, very similar to that, but with a Smurf. We did not engage in that because I didn't really need to talk to a Filipino guy that was playing a Smurf. It just didn't seem like it was my jam. Wasn't what I was really into. The newest section of the park is the Lionsgate section of the park. There's a step-up dance show, which I'm told is good, but I also did not want to go to because I didn't want to be in a theater that has like capacity of 1,000 and never had more than 15 people in it. It just seemed weird. I'd rather they just pretend that they're doing rehearsals all day, every day. The rides in that section of the park are entirely themed to Hunger Games. Oh, you know what? I did leave something out. So the previous section is like the Smurfs Village and Columbia Pictures, okay? Mm-hmm. There is one other attraction there, which is the Underworld attraction. And it's a traditional, like, theater-based motion simulator to the movie series Underworld, which honestly I had never heard of, but apparently they've made five of them.
Go figure.
And yeah, go figure. It is supposed to only be an attraction open to people over the age of 15. I've never seen more gratuitous violence in a theme park attraction. And it's literally within like spitting distance of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and Hotel Transylvania, which are obviously for children. In the actual attraction itself, there's tons of blood and guts and people getting shot and killed in the pre-show section, which tries to describe that you are somehow involved in this this war between vampires, human beings, and werewolves, which apparently is what the series is about. And then you go in, and so it's like I said, it's like a theater motion simulator. Just individual seats. They're not really like a big base or anything like that. And like the very first thing that happens is you're at this party, and someone's like, "Oh my God, the army's here!" And then you get hit with a water effect in the face because the character on screen is shot in the head, and there's blood everywhere. So immediately it's like, this is not something that would ever fly in the West, ever, not in a million years. And it just kind of goes from there, and you end up being like in the first person perspective of this ancient vampire that gets risen up. It's not very good. I would say it's probably the second worst attraction at the park, at the whole resort, at Dubai Parks and Resorts. Mm-hmm. Going back over to Lionsgate, so there's 2 attractions over in the Hunger Games section. There's Capital Bullet Train, which is a Mack shuttle coaster thing, which is decent. It was fun. I liked riding it. Essentially, you get on the coaster train. It leaves the station. It then has a transfer track. You go back and forth between the vertical loop and this vertical spike, which so it kind of looks like an old like Schwarzkopf shuttle loop or like a boomerang at first, but then once you get through the loop, it turns into sort of like a full circuit ride. And it's an interesting ride. It's got some forces on it, but it's not particularly long, which was a little I don't know. I would have liked a little bit more of a substantial attraction, and it didn't quite get it with that. The other ride that's there, and I have to look up the name for it, but it's like a tunnel simulator. A lot of these that have popped up ever since Movie Park Germany got one a couple of years ago, and basically what it is that it's a flight sort of ride, and you go to whatever the hell it is that they call this awful place that America has turned into post nuclear apocalypse.
Fun.
Yeah, it's it's not that awful, but obviously it's very nice at the time of of Hunger Games, I guess, to some degree. I'm trying to look up the name of it, and the website is so bad. It's just like zones, attractions. I want to go on the zone, and then you tell me what the attraction name is. Anyways, it's okay. They have 3D. It's Pan Am Aerial Tour. That's what it's called, Pan Am Aerial Tour. And we went on 3 of these rides between MotionGate. There's one that's over at Bollywood Park, which I'll talk about, and there's one at HubZero. And I'd say this was probably in the middle of the pack of those 3 that we did. It wasn't terribly convincing as far as the sensation of movement goes, but it wasn't hideous. It wasn't the worst thing. It kind of does feel a bit unfinished over there. There's some nice things that they've done as far as some of the theming, but it doesn't feel. It's not nearly as nice as the area for Columbia Pictures, and it's definitely not as nice as the DreamWorks stuff. Any questions thus far?
Yeah, I would say like you kind of just touched on it with the website. Like you can't find anything. Like was there? I would think with Hunger Games, living here in Orlando, every other billboard's Harry Potter, Harry Potter, Harry Potter. With the Hunger Games being so big here, is it like a big franchise internationally? Like I would think like if a park here had it at a Hunger Games, that would be a pretty big deal. How big is it? I mean, I know there's not a lot of people in the park, so it's harder to judge, but like, is the Hunger Games kind of like the signature, like their Harry Potter as Universal's?
I tend to think it's probably more the DreamWorks stuff for them, but it's tough to say because honestly, these parks do not do the best job of promotion. So I would say like whenever we would see a billboard or a sign for Dubai Parks, it was generally a mishmash of the stuff, kind of like how Universal, before they had Harry Potter, would be like, look, we've got Jaws and E.T. and Jurassic Park, and they're all in one place. Mm-hmm. Kind of that same sort of thing. And, they're trying to figure out a lot of stuff out there. That's the way I'll put it. And I'll get more to that later on, too. But, that section of the park's only been open for a month, too. I mean, they just opened it.
Wow.
So... at the very end of October, I want to say. So it's, they've had it open for like maybe 6 weeks. It didn't open with the rest of the facility. There's been, walls around it. There was no big ceremony, but they never do big ceremonies out there. There's no big, it's weird. I don't know the rationale of what happens over there and why they do the things that they do. Ferrari World's the same way. I mean, Mission Ferrari is going to open next February, or March is what we were told at the latest. So it's opening fairly soon, but there's no signage anywhere in Ferrari World that there's a new ride that's going to open next year, much less one of the most advanced rides on the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm. So, that's the dynamic attractions coaster, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So I guess as a segue into maybe one of the other parks, I've looked at the map a little bit. I'm looking at it now. But like maybe put it in perspective, like how it compares to Universal Orlando and like Disneyland. But all these parks are like at least Dubai Parks and Resort, the kind of the main ones here, like MotionGate, Legoland, Dollywood. How much are those like? Are they all like literally like boom, 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 just like Universal and Islands of Adventure, or is the map kind of okay? Yeah,
it's a lot. It's honestly, it's so much like going to Universal. If you picture the deadest day ever at Universal Orlando circa 2002 or 2003. Mm-hmm. That's what going to Dubai Parks and Resorts is like. Because there's a whole City Walk section that's there with a whole bunch of restaurants. And there's a lot of like commercial real estate that's there, and there's probably like a vacancy rate of like 40 or 50% right now. There's a lot of stuff that either opened and is already closed, like the Shake Shack, or has apparently never opened. As I learned about the Cheesecake Factory, there's a huge Cheesecake Factory location that's there that's been under construction for years, and the exterior's done, the interior looks mostly done, but not quite. And honestly, there's not enough people possibly going through there to justify the opening of a Cheesecake Factory. So it's a lot like it, and in a lot of ways, honestly, it's a much nicer space than what's in Orlando. The theming to the Riverwalk area at Dubai Parks and Resorts is really nice. There's this really cool European, like, medieval look to a lot of the stuff that's there, like the Irish Village and the French bakery that's there. It looks fantastic. They did a really nice job. There's a canal tour, so you can get on a boat and go up the canal around Dubai Parks. And there's some mangroves or something like that they've artificially made, so you can see birds. They have these taxis, basically like, golf carts. And for 10 dirham, which is about, it's about 4 dirham to the dollar, so about 250, you can take the taxi from one end of Riverwalk to the other. So you can get from MotionGate to the parking lot furthest away using that taxi if you don't want to use the parking lot shuttle or walk. So it's a lot like Universal Orlando in that sense. The major difference, of course, is that there's no nightlife. Mm-hmm. There are no nightclubs because there are very specific rules about the distribution and sale of alcohol. I think they would have been wise to have included some very small, like boutique hotels along with nightclub or bar establishments there, because I think that would have drawn some people. But I didn't design Dubai Parks and Resorts, so whatever was asked for by the sheiks, that's what they gave them.
Now, is this where Six Flags is going to go?
Yeah, you can see the construction walls for the area for Six Flags, which is going to be like right between MotionGate and the Lapita Resort. And
how's that construction looking?
There's dirt that's been moved around. I can tell you that much. I know they're saying 2019.
At this point, you need to move more than just dirt. I feel.
Yeah. My attitude with everything that ever gets built in the UAE is whatever year they tell you it's going to be done, add 2.5 to it, and that's the more realistic start date of whenever it might open, if it ever does. So, if it opens in 2020 or 2021, great. I know that they want to have it open by 2020 because the Expo, they're getting the World Expo that year, and it's going to be very nearby to where Dubai Parks is. So they're expecting a lot of crossover from people going to that. Hopefully that gets done in time so that they can, absorb that. I think big thrill rides honestly sell very well over in that part of the world too. So I think Six Flags is really, as lousy as that brand exists in America, I think that the big coasters over there will actually do really well. Anything else? Any other questions before we get to the stuff inside the DreamWorks building?
Not really.
Okay,
we're already like 40 minutes in, so we got a lot to cover.
Yeah. This is bad because we got so much stuff to go through. Okay, so the DreamWorks stuff. First of all, Shrek. Unfortunately, there's a Shrek restaurant which actually has like audio from Shrek and the characters in the restaurant, but the restaurant is closed right now. You can walk into it and like sit there and twiddle your thumbs. It used to be a full service restaurant, but no longer in operation. There's also a rock and tug style flat ride there, which is themed to a birthday party for Shrek's kids, which is really cute. And then there's the Shrek Dark Ride, which is a trackless dark ride. Basically, 2 cars go through at a time and kind of spin around one another, and just tons of practical stuff. Tons of, everyone's like, oh, I don't like video, I don't like screen rides. Well, guess what? Shrek is not a screen ride. Shrek is the furthest thing from it, and it's big, and it is fantastic. The Shrek Dark Ride at that park, if they put it into Universal Studios Orlando, people would go completely ape over it. They would go wild. They would talk about how it's like the best thing since, sliced bread. I mean, it's a fantastic ride. Fantastic ride.
That's awesome.
And the thing is, especially with being a trackless dark ride and going through a lot of big sets like it does, I don't think it probably translates so well to POV. But yeah, go check it out on POV because it's a great ride. How to Train Your Dragon. That section has this water play area that's indoors, which we don't understand why that would be there. It seems like an obvious thing to put outdoors rather than inside the air-conditioned building. But again, I didn't design it. Somebody else was asked to do that. There's a pirate ship attraction there, and then there's the main ride itself, which is like Dragon Riders or something like that. Like I said, it's a powered Mack inverted coaster, and it is outstanding. Outstanding. Big scenes, great animatronics. The screens that exist are great. The finale of the ride, where you launch out of the the dark ride scene area back into the main section, this sub world within the DreamWorks building. That's an enormous section, by the way. It's probably got a 70 or 80 foot ceiling, and it's a huge. I mean, I feel like it's the size of like a sports arena in America that they stuffed all this stuff into and themed the hell out of it. And you fly around the whole thing. The cars spin. It's a powered spinning. It's not like a free spinning. So, you're not getting ill moving around. And fantastic ride. Fantastic. I can't say enough good things about that ride. Madagascar has the Mad Pursuit Coaster and a couple of flat rides. The Mad Pursuit Coaster is a Eurofighter, non-inversion Eurofighter from Gerstlauer with a pretty nice launch, and that thing is a very wild attraction. If the new coaster that goes into Epcot is half as good as that, it's a winner. I am torn between whether or not I like it more than Mummy.
Mm-hmm.
Universal. Mummy is not nearly as wild, but it has some cool stuff that it does in terms of using turntables and going forwards and backwards and the false ending at the Orlando one. Madagascar doesn't have that, but what it does have is like huge airtime, crazy laterals. It's really well themed, super good ride. And then there's the Kung Fu Panda section, which I was mentioning earlier, and that, like I said, couldn't ride its anchor attraction, but we did ride the Noodle Bowl ride, which is basically like a teacups attraction. And again, also really, really well done. I thought the MotionGate stuff was generally good, with the exception of DreamWorks, which was, they just tore down everything that's currently the kids section at Universal Orlando and just plunked that building down in its place. No one would complain. No one would even know the difference, quite honestly. Most people in theme parkies have no idea what's in the DreamWorks building at Dubai Parks, and they would love it. They would adore it, and we would all talk about how great it is the next 100 years. So, highly recommend that. Highly recommend it just for the DreamWorks stuff alone, plus Hotel Transylvania, and then Capital Bullet Train's a nice bonus.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So,
Andrew, any questions on your end?
No, I'm good. I'm ready to hear about another park.
Yeah, so that's MotionGate
That's MotionGate. So
30 minutes later.
Legoland. Yeah,
Yes.
Legoland, we spent sparing time there. It's very much Legoland. And if you've ever been to a Legoland before, I've been to 3. My wife has been to 2 with me. Like, the attractions are pretty much the same Legoland attractions that you see everywhere else. They have the Dragon. They have the Dragon's Apprentice. Both, I believe, are, I want to say, Zyre coasters. Dragon has a very similar indoor section to all the other Dragon coasters that exist in the world. There's a boating school attraction. There's driving school attractions for the kids. There's the ride where you are on a fire truck and you have to pump water into a building. All the usual type of stuff that you see at Legoland. The one thing that's a little bit different is they have a submarine ride. I know that they're starting to expand that submarine ride out to a couple other parks, and it's a nice diversion. You get to see fish. It's very 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, like a little bit of a low-rent version of it, but since there isn't a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to go on anymore in Orlando, it's kind of nice, and it's fun, and their Shooting Dark ride is not particularly good. It's very similar to the one that's at the German park, Legoland Deutschland. It's probably identical. It's very short. The Orlando one is much, much longer and much more ornate. So their Miniland was nice. It was all Middle Eastern buildings. So instead of seeing anything from San Francisco or New York or Star Wars, it was like the Kuwait Towers, downtown Dubai, Petra, the Sheikh Zayed Mosque that's in Abu Dhabi, stuff like that. But it was okay. They were also doing Christmas Bricktacular, which, there was Christmas music and stuff. So, compared to hearing the call for prayer constantly, it was more norm for what I'm, used to at theme parks. So Legoland was there. Legoland water park, okay water park, nothing really to write home about. In that country, it's at like the bottom tier of water parks. I mean, we haven't done Iceland up in Razakheimi yet, but I'm sure that's a better water park than Legoland water park in terms of theming and the rest of it. You know, kind of like big flat concrete spaces, nothing really spectacular themed wise. Slides were okay. Nothing that really jumps out at me. You know, some decent stuff from Whitewater West. Wave pool has like no action at all. It's there. It was free, so of course we stopped in. Bollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Bollywood is
Bananas.
it's, you know, to like go to a theme park that everybody speaks English and everything is in English, but you have no understanding of, and it's all intellectual property based, and you don't know any of the properties.
Mm-hmm.
None of them. Like you have no frame of reference for a theme park.
But everyone else knows what it's referencing.
Yeah, and you know, I've never had that happen to me before.
So it would be like walking into like Islands of Adventure and not knowing one single IP, being like, "Why is coaster green?" It blasts me out.
It's probably even crazier because you don't have any Western culture to base it off of necessarily. So it's probably even crazier than that.
Yeah, like if you knew nothing about America or next to nothing about America, and you walked into Islands of Adventure, or nothing about England either, for that matter, like you just knew nothing. Mm-hmm. Like you knew English, but you knew nothing about like any of that, and you were like, I'm here. Let's see what happens. Let's see what the rides are like. Is there a list of the rides on the wiki? Because we need to talk about all of them. Is basically the issue. This is the longest freaking podcast of all time, but we need to discuss this part.
Okay, let's see.
Because this is an important part.
Well, you look at it and go, this is the podcast that when everyone decides to go to the UAE and they're on their 17 or 20-hour flight or whatever it is, this will serve them well.
This will help you if you ever want to even consider going to the UAE. Like, I can help you so much.
So I'm on their website.
This will be what you need to hear.
I'm on their website, and the banner for the zones and attractions is A+. Just absolutely A+.
Okay, I'm looking at it now. So, all right. So let's go through these. Mm-hmm. First item, Lagan.
The thrill of victory.
So there's two parts to Lagan. So first of all, I'll quickly describe Lagan because I'm going to end up watching like all of these movies now that I've seen this stuff. So Lagan was a film that I guess was released around 2001. It was nominated for Best Foreign Film at the Oscars. It did not win. It lost to some like Bosnian movie or Serbian film. And it's like 224 minutes long. And the premise of it is that like these people were going to be given like a heavy tax, and they were offered to either play a game of cricket, like Double or Nothing, like where they either get the tax like doubled, which would like totally ruin the whole village, or if they won, then the tax would be lifted from them by the British. And it was like how cricket was introduced. Yeah, so it's a steampunk simulator ride themed to a movie about cricket.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It is outlandish. It's insane. The pre-show is wacky as hell. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, essentially, the actual ride itself, it's as if you are the cricket ball in this huge steampunk theme park that has been constructed by the inventor, who's the great-grandson of the guy that won the game.
Mm-hmm.
And if that sounds completely bananas to you, I assure you actually riding it is even crazier. It's the weirdest attraction I've ever seen. And it's the building that it's in also features a cricket ball themed like children's Ferris wheel and a small carousel with like Indian animals on it, which then reminds you that stuff like tigers and elephants live in India.
Yeah,
that's
makes sense.
The cricket
insane.
carnival.
Yeah.
Step into a rural celebration at the Champarnar Carnival. This is ridiculous.
for the record, I purchased a Lagan Thrill of Victory polo shirt.
Damn straight.
It's incredible. I'm actually really excited to see that movie. Like, Roger Ebert gave it 3.5 stars and said it was fantastic. He's like, it's like
really?
The greatest 1930s film you've never seen. So I'm already pumped. Sholay, The Hunt for Gabar Singh, Spider-Man cars and screen styles with guns, themed to a Indian Western.
Okay.
And you shoot a ton of stuff, and not really much in terms of practical effects or items that you go through. It's pretty much screen oriented, but I would say as far as like screen shooters, just below Justice League and Benno's at Ferrari World, which I'll get to later, but really good. Zane loved it. Zane and I, my wife stayed back at the room, and this is when we went to go see the show there, which I'll talk about soon too. And we rode that thing like 3 times in a row. We just stayed on board, but like, can we just stay? And they're like, yeah, you can stay. We just kept going around and shooting stuff. We love Cholet. And I also got a Cholet shirt, and so did he. And he actually wore his when he was in Singapore, and Indian people saw him, and I guess it was like they had like a connection because he knew what Cholet was. And Gabbar Singh is apparently like the Darth Vader of India. Like he's like the most infamous like evil character in the history of Indian cinema. So Cholet, another movie that I'll have to see. Fantastic. Great. It was a really fun ride. I don't say it was like the greatest ride in the world, but it was fun. Debang Stunt Spectacular Show. The best stunt show of all time. By far. Not even close. Not even close.
What makes it so crazy?
It breaks every convention of Western stunt shows because it's a Bollywood show. So, like, the Debang character is apparently like this corrupt cop, and but he beats up all the bad guys, and there's like gratuitous shots to the nuts, like so many crotch shots, and they use like sound effects every time. He like tweaks a dude's nipples.
Was there like a little squeaky sound when he does it, like the squeaky?
Yeah. Oh my god, hilarious! And it begins and ends with these huge dance song numbers, including Debang himself, who does like a standing backflip during his dancing. Freaking great. The crowd went nuts for Debang. There was like, how like after a stunt show or after any show, it's always like you can meet the cast outside, and nobody really goes to meet the cast because who cares? People like mobbed Debang. People were all about Debang. There was like 100 Indian people being like, Debang. It was great. It's great. Loved it. My favorite stunt show I've ever seen. I don't know if anything will ever touch it in a million years. Mughal Azam is a restaurant which was actually quite good. It's right next door to the big show theater, the Raj Mahal Theater. Ra 1 Unleashed is part of the Hall of Heroes. So they have superheroes in India, specific to them. Ra 1 is actually the villain. It's like G1, I think, is the actual is the name of like the protagonist. Not to get like totally Wikipedia about it, but basically the idea is that there was a video game that was created by this Indian company, and the AI managed to get out of the game and was super evil, so they had to like create a hero to beat the AI creature, which was modeled after the guy's dad, and then it killed his dad, and so it's kind of like his dad of the guy that created the video game.
It's symbolism.
And it's not very good. Yeah, it's not a particularly good simulator. There's a blown speaker in it. So the sound's pretty bad. It's weird. It's really weird. Krish's Hero's Flight. This is the best flying theater in the world. Hands down.
I want to hear about this because you were tweeting about this.
Yeah, so Krish is Superman. Okay? If you just accept that Krish is Indian Superman, and like he has like a very similar like background, like he's not from Krypton, but like aliens basically help make him exist. Like, and he can fly, and he has incredible super strength, and he can do basically all the Superman things that Superman does, except he's from India. And, if you understand that's what he is, then great. And it's not a 3D projection. The video on it is super crisp, super crisp. Unlike most flying theater attractions, which just kind of show like almost like a travel log or a series of scenes from somewhere far away that you fly over, like this is a ride, right? Like you're in a vehicle, you're supposed to be going to the Krish Museum, which has just opened in Mumbai. Aliens attack, and first of all, you almost die because lightning strikes the cable car thing that you're riding in that can also fly, which of course lends the question as to why there would ever need to be a cable car in the first place if it can fly. But, secondary, you quickly accept that, and Krish brings you around, and you get to see a CGI Taj Mahal, which Zane says looks better than the one that's in the Soaring Over the World. You go through the Mumbai Gate. You are flying through the Kashmir section of India when basically the aliens come and attack, and then you go into this. It basically becomes like Independence Day with Krish. And it's really good. The video is fantastic. It has because of the concave nature of the screen and the way it was shot. They did a fantastic job with that system. So it looks 3D. It looks very real, in spite of the fact that it's just like a 4K projection without glasses. It's not darkened because you don't have the glasses. When the door closes at the end of the ride, it's a video screen, and I was shocked at how good that looked. Easy to follow because as long as you accept he's Superman, everything makes sense. Loved it. I wrote it a ton of times, and Zane got a Krish snow globe. That's how much he loved it.
Wow.
He bought a snow globe of a ride. I did not do Cinemagic. That was pretty much the only attraction in all of Dubai Parks that I did not do. Don the Chase is another tunnel simulator ride. It was the best one that we did in the UAE. It was better than the one over at Lionsgate, and way better than the one at HubZero. Don the Chase. Don is this evil dude that runs guns or drugs or something like that, and you chase him in the streets of Dubai, and then it goes into the air, and you get to see all the big sights of Dubai during the ride, and it's wild and crazy, and Don basically just laughs at you and tells you that he's going to kill you the whole time. And he's like, yeah, I think I'll actually let you live. And he loads you. The end of the ride, you get loaded with a forklift back into a container, like a shipping container, and then they close it. And I thought that was actually great. I enjoyed Don the Chase quite a bit. The last major thing, first of all, also the food at that place is great at Bollywood. Great food everywhere. As you'd expect, lots of Indian food. Great stuff. Yan-e-Yagar is the show that takes place in Raj Mahal Theater. It is a hard ticket. You have to pay to see the show at the theater.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it's like 95, whatever their currency is.
Durham, yeah. If you buy a ticket to Bollywood, apparently there's a way that you can get into the theater without paying to go to Bollywood. You can just go see the show. We paid 60 Durham a person, and we were in the fourth row. It wasn't full at all. I mean, big surprise, but it probably had the most capacity, the most number of people seeing it of any show at Dubai Parks. It's like a Las Vegas level production. It's 2 hours long with an intermission.
Whoa.
Yeah, I saw that you were tweeting during the you're like, I'm an hour into this in intermission right now.
Yeah, and I was eating samosas and having a Red Bull. And Zane and I, the whole time, we were like, can you believe this is happening? Can you believe this thing? Can you believe this? Can you believe that? Can you believe this show?
I'm actually looking. I'm looking at for tickets for this weekend, and it looks like there's maybe 10 seats sold in the entire theater.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. Not at all. They're down. They're only running 3 days a week now. I'm sure it was open 6 days or 5 days a week at first. It's a great show. There's probably a cast of 60. There's puppeteers, there's dancers, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Even if you know nothing about Bollywood, like me, it's so over the top. It's so preposterous. The videos, the effects, the stage effects are great. Just top level stuff. Amazing show. I can't think of a single theme park that has a show inside the theme park itself that comes anywhere near that. Not even in the same ballpark, not in the same universe. Outstanding, worth every penny. 60 Durham is $13. To go see a show of that caliber is crazy. So highest recommendation possible for Yanni Yagar. when Zane bought his merchandise, we were talking to the guy at the counter. Everything there was buy one get one free. Literally everything in the store was buy one get one free. You could buy any one item and get a second item free at the Bollywood Park stores. And the guy at the counter was like, "Well, I'm glad you were here to see it before they made the changes." So
what?
Oh,
exactly. Yeah. So my concern is that Bollywood is the natural thing to lead. To draw in tourists from places like India, which is, where most people are going to come from to go to the United Arab Emirates on vacation. And, for me, that's not the place to change. Like, that's the place you should be promoting the hell out of and adding to, not taking away from or switching up on. So I hope that they look more at expansions to things like Legoland, which has a huge pad next to it that's empty, where there was supposed to be a hotel, or to MotionGate, or just concentrate on Six Flags because you got a whole new gate that you're supposed to be building, rather than make any wholesale changes to Bollywood Park. I think Bollywood Park is great. It's just fun. It's different. I've always said, I prefer novelty over good, but when novelty gets to be good, when you have that crossover, it's the best of both worlds. So highly recommend Bollywood, and if you have the opportunity to go in the near future, you should, because there's no park that exists like that anywhere, and highest recommendation possible for that place.
Cool.
So IMG, we should probably talk about IMG.
Now set the stage for this one. It's not in the Dubai Park area, correct? Like, how far is this from the ones we were just talking about?
Probably a half an hour drive.
Okay.
It's out there.
And did you?
It's still in the Emirate of Dubai or the city of Dubai, but it's on the outskirts. IMG Worlds of Adventure is part of the development that was supposed to be Dubai Land, which never happened. And this is what ended up happening in its place. They've announced that they want to build a second gate to this park. And that they intend to have it open by 2020 or 2021. I have a hard time believing that, but, it's possible. This is another park I've been avoiding spoilers on for a long time. It just opened last year. It was under heavy construction when we were in the Emirates back in 2015, and I was hoping it might open by then. I was off by over a year. This park has, 3 attractions that are really, 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 really good. First of all, it has a Marvel license, which you think that you would build lots off of that Marvel license, and I feel like they're doing a really bad job of that. They have, in the Marvel license, they've got a Spider-Man spinning coaster from Gerstlauer. I think it's from Gerstlauer. No, it's a Mack spinning coaster. Supposedly it's the same layout as Sierra Sidewinder, except it's basically elevated 30 feet off the ground. I have no idea if that's actually true or not. I'd love to see POVs comparing the two, because I feel like it's not. But it's not a bad spinning coaster. It's there. Has some decent theming. They have a top spin themed to Thor, which has a really wild cycle on it with a lot of flips. But the 2 rides that everybody talks about that I'd heard about in advance were Avengers Age of Ultron and the Hulk. So Age of Ultron is a Spider-Man Transformer style, mixed media sort of dark ride. I don't know if there's any animatronics on the ride at all, honestly. It's pretty much all sets with the screens, but it's really well done. The vehicle is like you're taking off in one of those Avengers heli jet sort of things. And the way that it backs out of the station when you get on is so cool. The sense that you are on something that's suspended or flying is way better than you would have originally hoped, and it's a really good ride. Again, if that was a ride that they just plunked right into Universal, there might be some initial complaining that it's so similar to attractions that they already have, but overall people would get over it and they'd enjoy it. Hulk, though, is a whole different animal. Hulk is a theater attraction. Okay. And It's called Hulk Epsilon Base 3D. And when you're on this ride, you're in a round theater, so you sit in these seats to kind of look like you're in a what is it, like a planetarium is what it looks like a big dome, and you sit in the middle of it, and you're all sort of pointed in, looking up. And the idea is that you have to escape the Epsilon base because the leader has taken over these robots that have been created as basically like Hulkbuster type things. And I don't fully understand the ride system. I don't think it's possible the whole thing spins. Like, something has to stay stable. I don't know how. It feels like everything spins. And when I say everything, I mean the giant dome screen that's over you and the motion base all seems to spin at the same time.
Huh.
Flawlessly with the video to create the sense of real movement on this motion base in a way that no other ride that I've ever been on, any simulator ride, has ever come close to duplicating. It is uncanny. And, you know, the one thing I don't like about, which a lot of people have I'm sure somebody actually, I don't know if anyone's actually complained about it, but you can't really cover up the exit doors, so you can kind of see occasionally, like, the exit door has the projection over it if you look carefully enough for that kind of thing. But it's so crazy. That ride is amazing. Hulk is fantastic. Hulk is a ride where every regional theme park in America that can afford Hulk, I hope that they maybe they can't afford Hulk. Maybe it's a $70 million thing or $100 million thing. But if you can afford Hulk, you should buy one. You should buy 3. Universal should have one. Disney should have one. SeaWorld should have one. I mean, that ride is absolutely fantastic. Hulk is great. The other ride that's at that park that really, really, really is good is the Velociraptor coaster that's there, which is very similar to Blue Fire at Europa Park. It's a launched Mack coaster, really strong ride, really good forces, really long, really good attraction. It's part of the adventure zone called the Forbidden Territory. Oh, it's not the Forbidden Territory. I'm sorry. It's Lost Valley Dinosaur Adventure. One thing about this park is that you've got Marvel, and they have Cartoon Network as their primary IPs that they've paid for. But there are no attraction shirts for anything, shirts or merchandise at all, for stuff that's branded to Cartoon Network or Marvel. Just unbranded, like non-IMG Worlds of Adventure stuff. Just character things.
Weird.
Are available for sale. But they have lots of stuff for Lost Valley Dinosaur Adventure, which is this, like, another steampunk, for whatever reason. I guess they love steampunk out there, / Jurassic Park, like, mishmash that they created. So it's their original IP, so they have Lost Valley Dinosaur Adventure junk. And it's all terrible. Like, none of it's any good. But it has the Velociraptor coaster there. There's a trackless dark ride called Forbidden Territory, which is like a weird dinosaur meets Jurassic Park, but really more dinosaur, countdown to extinction, like low rent version of it. Mm-hmm. And it's something to see. I'll say that much about it. And then there's a Gerstlauer Eurofighter called Predator that's pretty solid, and a couple small kiddie rides. And then the other zone that was really interesting there was the Cartoon Network zone, which has like an Adventure Time suspended monorail dark ride attraction, the Ben 10 5D Hero Time simulator, which is probably the best simulator ride outside of Hulk that we encountered in these new parks. The amazing ride of Gumball, which is a shooting dark ride, kind of similar to the Ghostbusters one in terms of the way that stuff was integrated and the way it looked. A little bit more fun than that, because it was Gumball. And like the writing that was done for Adventure Time and Amazing Ride of Gumball was pretty good. So they were entertaining rides. The problem with that is, so we had been told before we got there by somebody that they were way behind in pay for like their executive management. And so that kind of colored our opinion going into it. Like, it was almost like we were looking to see if there was stuff that was wrong, but like, it became apparent like what stuff was wrong very quickly, because like a lot of places, like a number of the food venues, like there's the Tony Skydeck restaurant, which now is only open for corporate events. Like you can't go there anymore. A lot of the restaurants are closed, seemingly permanently. Apparently there were complaints that there weren't enough things to do for young kids. So the solution that IMG came up with after building a like $1.6 billion theme park was to buy a bunch of coin-operated rides like you'd find outside a grocery store.
Oh, boy.
And install them on play throughout the park. So you'll just be walking around, and then like, you know, a random like cartoon, like a SpongeBob thing that you're supposed to like put a 3-year-old on will just start going. And then they have one of those like electric trains like you'd see at a shopping mall, like a decrepit Midwestern shopping mall.
Yep.
on rubber tires, and that rolls around. And that was their solution, was basically to spend $75,000 on like the worst possible stuff. There seems to be like an issue with their supply chain as well, because like we couldn't get a Diet Pepsi from the fountains. They were like, oh, we don't have any. We have Pepsi and like orange soda right now. There's also these machines they're pretty much everywhere in the Middle East, where you put in 20 dirham or whatever the equivalent was in Oman, and you get to select 5 different flavors of Haribo gummies, and it puts them in a hypoallergenic cup and dispenses them for you. And then you get to eat your Haribo gummies, which is great because Haribo gummies are delicious. Everywhere we went to that wasn't IMG Worlds of Adventure would have 10 different flavors to pick from. IMG only had 5. Like, they repeated flavors 2 or 3 times over, which was weird. Like, why would you do that unless you can't get more and you just have these are the flavors that you got, kind of thing. So, excuse me. I thought it's a decent park for sure, and it's got some really spectacular rides, but it's on a weird path, like a really weird trajectory.
Okay.
And I don't know what's going to happen to them. We heard that Dubai Parks has like more money than God, and they'll be fine. IMG theoretically has more money than God too behind it, but I don't know if they'll be fine. Ferrari World. I guess we'll go over that really quickly here.
So can we just build off your last comment there? The one thing I've always joked about, because I'm super excited to go to Dubai. Like, that's next on my list to go to, I think. But I always try to like rationalize it with the what you just said there is like, I want to check out these parks, but like if they do close or if that does happen, like I want to be like, I'll book the next plane flight out there to make sure I see it. Do you think, like 5 years from now, what do you think Dubai or the UAE in general is going to be? Do you think all the parks that are currently open will still be open?
I have a hard time picturing that they're going to spend $1 billion on these places and then let them rot.
Just close them?
Yeah, I can't see that. I think that they'll make changes to them, and they'd be significant changes, and things in them may close or be abandoned outright, because that's something that happens out there all the time. But I can't see IMG Worlds of Adventure just closing and being done. I just see them going with different directions with it. So it's kind of like, if you want to see IMG Worlds of Adventure and Dubai Parks and Resorts as they were intended to be built, you should go now. You should go like imminently, like in the next, I would say 6 months, if not sooner. If you don't do that, then probably what you're going to start seeing, I would expect, would be, different things like rolling closures, not opening every day, reduced hours, attractions being closed or removed, or just like basically just boarded up and forgotten for a decade, things like that. So, that would be what I strongly suggest to people right now, because just so many gates have opened, and there's another one coming. Right next to Ferrari World is going to be WB Movie World, and it's even bigger than IMG Worlds of Adventure and Ferrari World. And it's a huge building. It's going to have like LED screens on the ceiling. They're going to be able to simulate the different environments that you go into, whether you're in like Bedrock with the Flintstones or whatever. So, that place opens next year, and that's just going to add even more competition to them.
Which is a competition for a market that doesn't seem to I mean, like Orlando competition, there's 60 million people coming here, and everyone's trying to get a slice of the pie. There seems to be more parks than they know what to do with.
They're trying to create the pie by building all the parks.
Yeah, I guess.
And hoping that people show up. And by the way, I fully endorse going there. I mean, I think it's great. I think it's really fun. Yeah, it's definitely not Orlando, but that's okay. There are things about it that are sometimes testing about it that aren't Orlando, but there are a lot of things that I think are really cool about it. We can get more into that. At this point, this is going to just be like my episode, I guess. We'll just talk about your trip next time.
No worries. So yeah, Ferrari World. I think this is probably the most well known, and this is the park that's been there the longest, right?
Of the one that we're talking about, it opened, I want to say, in 2010. We'd been there before, so Meredith and I have already been on Formula Rossa, which is the world's fastest roller coaster. I love that ride. It's so good. It keeps its speed up for the entirety of the attraction. It's a very long ride. It's not, a quick sort of 10 or 15-second experience like Dragster or King Ka is. It's a substantial ride. What has opened since we were last there were 3 attractions. One is, I think it's like Benno's Great Race, I want to say is the name of it, which is an outstanding mixed media shooting dark ride with video screens, very similar in a lot of ways to Toy Story in terms of the way the gameplay goes about, where you do different things with your gun. You're not just shooting things. You're you have to cut spider webs, or you have to grab bees and put them in jars to score points.
Okay,
but it's really good. There was one screen that was broken at the end of it. I assume it was probably a screen that was projected onto a mist or something like that, and I don't know why it wasn't working. I should have asked the manager when we were talking with him about it. But aside from that, lots of big animatronics, lots of really cool gameplay, great ride, trackless ride. Benno's, I think, is the best shooting dark ride probably in the world today, hands down.
Nice.
And I really like Justice League a lot out there, and I know a lot of people are like, you really like Justice League more than the stuff at Disney or Universal, and probably like Men in Black. It's right up there with Men in Black and Justice League for me as far as shooting dark rides go. Really, really good ride. Turbo Track is this Intamin launch shuttle coaster that doesn't really do very much, but it's there. And,
isn't that the one with the spiral right in the middle?
Yeah, it goes right through the center of Ferrari World. It used to be an S&S tower that was there, and they eliminated that and replaced it with Turbo Track. And actually, when you're outside, when you're at, like, for instance, at the racetrack at the Yaz Island circuit, watching a race, where we were in the West Grandstands, we could see the coaster vehicle exiting the building and going up the spirals. So that was pretty cool. It's not all that wild. It's definitely better than an S&S tower in my mind. And it's a fun ride. Oh, speaking of S&S towers, I did forget something at MotionGate, which is the Zombieland S&S tower attraction, which has the turbo drop and space shot functions both going.
Zombieland as the movie.
Yes.
So what you're saying is it's basically a reincarnation of the Wild Adventures drop tower.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I forgot about that MotionGate. I'm sorry. That was fun. I enjoyed that. Back to Ferrari World. So we did Turbo Track, and then the other thing that's open since I was last there was Flying Aces, which is basically the same exact trains and restraints as what is on Sky Rush at Hershey Park, your favorite Joe. But it's nowhere near as extreme as Sky Rush is.
Huh. Okay.
And so I think a lot of people have made the claim that it's but they've changed something about their restraints over Sky Rush, and that's not true. There's nothing substantially different. It's just that there's only one spot of like really serious ejector error on that ride on Flying Aces, whereas everything on Sky Rush tries to kill you. So it's not. A lot of people, I think, that are like big time Intamin fans have kind of tried to be like, oh, it's a really fun ride. It's it's good, but nobody ever sits there and says like, by the way, it's not intense at all. And it just kind of swoops around and doesn't really have very much in forces. So that's the truth about Flying Aces. It's a fun ride, yes, but I would say as far as like the new big steel coasters, in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, like the Emirates go, I would have it below both Velociraptor and Capital Bullet Train, because they're those attractions.
And those Mack launch coasters. I mean, I haven't been on either of those, but obviously, but I love Blue Fire. So you tell me, you're saying that one of them's very similar to Blue Fire. I mean, that's got me super interested there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's got like an indoor-outdoor section. The launch is indoor. There's like a video screen. And then you go outdoor, and there are some effects that are out there to give you, some low clearance moments. I love Velociraptor. I think it's great. Flying Aces, by the way, I will say Flying Aces has a fantastic queue line. It's one of the best queue lines I've ever seen. The thing with Ferrari is, as a brand, they are very protective of their brand. So when the park was first built, like they couldn't have any inverting roller coasters because Ferraris can't go upside down, right? Like a Ferrari car can't go upside down.
Yeah.
It's not a lot.
So
right? So it just wasn't, you couldn't do it. So they had to think of very inventive ways to try and get the Ferrari brand to do stuff like inverting. And one way to do that was they were like, oh, look, Enzo Ferrari worked on airplanes like after or around World War One. So we'll make it like a biplane themed ride, which is what Flying Aces is.
Okay, that's a creative way to do that.
And it's kind of the same thing with Mission Ferrari, where that's going to be a spy car. And also, here's your Parkscope exclusive for those listening out there about Mission Ferrari. First of all, we were told February, March opening. Mm-hmm. So it's opening next year for reals. Like they've done clearance tests. It's actually run. The coaster is run. They're putting in the theming. Mm-hmm. It will be the first ride in the Middle East with a fire effect.
Huh.
So there you go. First time. Apparently they had to go through a lot of hoops. Essentially they said, we want to do fire on the ride. And the local authorities said, well, no one's ever done that before here. And they said, yeah, but it's been done. And they went back and forth for a while. But there'll be fire on the ride. So there you go. There's an exclusive for you.
They laid the groundwork for Six Flags to add fire to their wooden roller coaster. Somewhere Jim Reed Anderson's listening to this podcast going, yes, he cleared hurdles for us. We can now make Terminator Salvation the wooden roller coaster with fire.
Yes, it's time. We're here. What could possibly go wrong? Especially when it's 130 out. So, yeah, Ferrari World otherwise, for those who've never been, it has this like Epcot-ish sort of dark ride that uses Spider-Man style vehicles that describes how they build a Ferrari, which is great. There's a flying theater attraction where you fly over Italy, which is fun. There's a sort of standard motion simulator-based attraction that's basically like you are some young Ferrari designer who gets stuck in a car with whoever the lead driver is of Ferrari at the moment, which right now is Sebastian Vettel, so you go with him around the test track at Maranello. There is another dark ride called Speed of Magic, which is a Spider-Man-esque dark ride, which actually was much better than I remembered it being. I feel like they must have done something to make it slightly better than what it used to be. Like they fixed the screens and made them not as streaky, so that when they projected stuff on them, you didn't see streaks on the background. But it's a really weird ride. I mean, like the very premise is like you're a 10-year-old whose dad gave him keys to drive a Ferrari, and they were stolen by a character in a video game. Because, everybody's dad comes home with a Ferrari and says, hey, son, you want to go take it out for a spin?
I just got a new Ferrari. I just picked one up.
I just got a Ferrari, and you're like 11. You want to drive it? Yeah, sure, Dad. So that was okay. Fiorano GT Challenge, which is this weird coaster. I think it's a Mack ride, I want to say. I could be wrong. Could be Gerstlauer, too. But it's kind of like Stunt Job. Or Stunt Job, Italian Job / stunt coaster at Kings Island, Canada's Wonderland, etc. Except it has even less coasterish moments to it and more like limb launches. It has probably like 5 or 6. It feels
weird.
It's like a weird sort of test track, like unthemed test track, but racing.
Now, wasn't this supposed to like drift or something, and then they never turned on that functionality, or am I thinking of something else?
That could be the case. I'm not sure. I don't recall off the top of my head if it was allowed to do that or could have at some point. But it's okay. It's not like a bad ride, and it never has a line, so that's nice.
Does anything there have a line though?
Formula Rossa did. Man, they were only running one train during the Grand Prix, but it would get a line of like. There was at one point it had an hour line, and we were like, "Yeah, I'm not waiting an hour for that." Like I've been on it many times. Like it's totally okay. And you know it was nice because we would park over at Yaz Mall and then go from there, basically through Ferrari World to get to the Grand Prix and back. The first day that we were there on that Friday, I ended up skipping J. Cole so I could go ride stuff at Ferrari World for 20 minutes. So we rode like 5 things. So sorry, J. Cole. They promised me Kendrick Lamar, and they switched up at the last minute. So I didn't care about you like I did Kendrick, and I was tired. I was on the road for a long time before I got there. So those are kind of like the big guys that most people have heard of. HubZero is a new place that opened near a shopping mall, which there are many of. But HubZero is this video game themed attraction place, and it's kind of like a Legoland Discovery Center. It's like, or Disney Quest 2.0 is the way I would put it. And you can get basically like a pay one pat or pay one price admission sort of thing to it if you want. And it's not cheap to do that. Or you can buy your attractions a la carte as well, which is what I would personally recommend because not everything there was of interest to me. Like, you know, my wife and I went there by ourselves, and, you know, we're not going to go play laser tag, me against her, at Gears of War Laser Siege. Like, it just didn't make sense. There's a Hack Attack attraction, which apparently you have some sort of gun device on a simulator, and I didn't do that. I did skip that. Resident Evil Bioterror 3D trackless dark ride. Not that great. Basically Gumball at Dubai Park, or not Dubai Parks, but IMG, except it was themed to Resident Evil, and like they both had like these weird sort of physical targets that would exist in addition to the video screens. I shot everything on the video screens. My wife shot the shitty physical things, and she beat me by like a huge score. It's okay. A lot of the screens were very dark too. I was not that impressed with it.
Okay.
Not a huge fan. Let me see here. I'm looking through them. There's the shooter. We skipped Asura's Wrath, which was basically just a simulator, like a cinema simulator sort of thing. We did do Dragon Age, Flight of the Wardens.
Okay.
Which I would describe as the poor man's Harry Potter. You get an Akuka arm, and it swings you backwards into like an IMAX screen, and you do your thing, and then it swings you back, and that's the end of it. So it's not terrible. It's not the worst thing I've ever done, and I can see how something like that will be appealing in the future to, you know, malls in America as every Sears closes down and we need new anchors.
Yes.
That stuff like this will end up taking its place. So it was the best thing that we did there. We also did Final Fantasy VII Escape from Midgar, which was a tunnel simulator, and it was by far, I would say not by far, but it was definitely the worst of the 3 that we did. Worse than Dawn or the one in the Hunger Games section. For whatever reason, 3D was not working, so it was a purely 2D experience, which probably didn't help them any.
Weird.
Yeah, and it was okay. It was there. You know, I did it because I was like, well, I want to see what it's like. And also, unlike the other two, unlike Dawn and unlike Hunger Games, rather than being loaded into the actual tunnel projection center, you basically just walk into the thing as it's stationary, and you're already in the tunnel at that point. So it doesn't work as well in terms of trying to get you into the attraction, I think, because of that. You're like, oh, yeah, now I'm just happen to be in this blank room that suddenly turned into a bus station. Like, that makes a lot of sense, right? It was okay. Not really. It wasn't actually okay. It was pretty bad. Basically, if HubZero is the future of theme parks, then I'm good on theme parks. I'll find something else to do. One of the big things I wanted to get to here was Global Village. Mm-hmm. And Global Village is not well discussed in theme park circles. I really wanted to go there. Zane knew like nothing about it. He got there and he was like blown away. Of all the things that we did in the UAE and Oman, amusement theme park wise, museums, anything, Global Village was by far, well, actually, aside from the Burj Khalifa, which we didn't do because it was so jammed, Global Village was by far the busiest. By far. There were probably 40,000 people in Global Village the night that we went.
Oh, wow.
Which was a Sunday night, the night that we went to IMG. Mm-hmm. IMG might have had 500 people in it. in a huge indoor theme park that was like double the size of like Mall of America. Like not the Mall of America theme park, like the Mall of America, okay? Mm-hmm. Like maybe 500 people, 600 people in that whole thing. Like solo rides on the coasters whenever you wanted them kind of deal. Global Village was slammed. Global Village has a low admission price. It's only about 15 dirham. So you're looking at about $4 to get in the door. And then there's a sort of a carnival around back. They have a new provider this year, so they have a bunch of new permanent rides. There's a Vekoma Junior Boomerang that's back there called London Loop with this bizarre audio soundtrack. Zane and I did the Starflyer. They had a Funtime Starflyer, an 80-meter model, which was really good. And you know they had a nice portable drop tower or semi-portable drop tower that was pretty big, probably also an 80-meter model, so 240 feet. A lot of nice-looking flat rides, and then there's the actual Global Village itself, which is like it's like Epcot on acid. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It's a series of probably 30 national pavilions, and they have a stage where they have shows in the middle of this thing. And then there's also like another area where they have like a stunt show that involves like monster trucks and motorcycles. Like it's kind of like Lights, Motors, Action, but like way over the top.
Yeah.
And then there's the countries themselves. Like, you know, when you go to Epcot, you're like Mexico and China and, you know, Norway and well, I mean, Norway's kind of like an outlier, but, you know, like France and Germany, like places like that. Like, the countries in Global Village are like Bosnia and Syria and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Jordan. Africa and the Americas just get their own thing. And Egypt and, you know, there's a whole bunch of countries in there, like a lot of countries. And, you know, you go to the Yemen Pavilion and it's more like a shopping experience for the most part. Like there's a lot of stalls selling stuff. Mm-hmm. And they sell, it's just like you go in and you can go in and buy like a kilo of honey at like the Yemen Pavilion and then like see like Yemeni musicians play and then buy other stuff like a rug or something. I mean, it just, everything is super loud in there too. They're like, you go in the Nepal or India sections and, you know, as it should be, like it's just like ear piercing loudness from the music. But it was jammed. It was jammed with people. And clearly there's something about that experience. I think the low cost experience, the low cost of entry, and having that much noise and activity around that draws people in. That I think that parks like IMG and the Dubai parks, in some way, I feel like if you're going to build a theme park in that part of the world, you have to integrate that kind of noise and activity level while being, you know, an immersive themed experience or whatever. And I know that goes against everything that every theme designer in America understands, but they should all go to Global Village as much as it probably pains them to look at the exteriors of some of these things that are out there, because they're wild. If you look at pictures of Global Village, look at a picture of the Americas on Global Village, it's just like everything in the entirety of North and South America slammed together, like the Statue of Liberty and like Native Americans and pyramids. I just like step pyramids. It's wild. It looks insane. And, you know, these things are completely insane looking, but it draws a lot of people. It draws thousands of people, supposedly 5 to 6 million people over the 6 months that it runs, from November to April. So there's no park. I don't think Dubai Parks, Ferrari World, and IMG combined to have 6 million people. So clearly, there's something to be learned from Global Village, and I think that anybody that's working on theme parks in the area in the future needs to look specifically at that to learn something about what that market wants.
Do you think it's the shopping? Do you think it's, I mean, what is it, do you think?
It's a combination of the idea that you go and there's people love to consume out there. I mean, I think that the annual stipend for an Emirati is like $74,000. So they can buy stuff, you know? And I know next year they're introducing a VAT on stuff in the Emirates, which I think is going to probably dissuade a lot of international travelers, or not international travelers, but international workers to staying there. But those who are there are getting paid a lot of money, and they have money to spend. So people like to consume things when they're out there, for sure. It's stuff that's familiar to them. It's stuff that's still exotic to them. I mean, I don't know how many of them go to Yemen on a regular basis right now. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you can go and get items from Iran, because there's an Iranian pavilion that's there. You know, you can go buy rugs and you know, a 6-pound bag of cardamom or whatever. Is just, it's a nice plus to go along with the shows and the rides and the canals. And there's like a whole street of food vendors, tons and tons of food vendors everywhere. Lots of musical things. I mean, like, I remember my wife and I briefly watched this Iraqi musician that was doing like 4 sets a night at the Iraqi pavilion. You know, like, when are you going to see that in America? You're not going to see that at Epcot anytime soon, right? I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So stuff like that was really cool to see, and I think that, you know, for them, there's a sense of familiarity with it, but there's definitely still some exoticism with it as well, and it combines a lot of interests all in one thing, and also that it's a big loud thing. They like big loud things. They're, you know, especially people that are coming from places like Pakistan or India, which are super population dense, you know, or the Philippines. You know, they're used to a world where, you know, the population density is 4 times what it is in New York City. So they're expecting loud, and they expect noisy and lots of colors. And that's what's going to draw them. You know, going to, you know, your average American theme park or installing something like that there is almost too sedate, I think, and it's not going to draw well. That's just my take on it. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the big stuff.
Yeah.
Quick question about the big stuff.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked a little bit about how some of them are a little bit of a drive. Some of them are kind of all grouped together. If I were going to Dubai, which I hope to soon, how do you get around? Did you guys? I know you did it like from the bigger areas. You run like a cruise. Do people rent a car? Is there like, you know, here in Florida, you can take a bus from SeaWorld over to Busch Gardens. Is there like buses to the parks? How do you get to the parks?
Taxis. You can. I would say this: if you're in Dubai proper, renting a car is not advisable because the traffic there is really bad. Once you get to the outskirts of Dubai, it's not nearly as bad, you know. And if you're going to be traveling outside peak hours, you'll be fine. But in Dubai specifically, taxis are the way to go. Uber is in Dubai, and the Ubers are better than your standard taxis and about the same price. You're basically always getting a Lexus, and it's always super nice and clean. And going back to, I mentioned, you know, getting the SIM cards. If you get a due SIM card with a tourist plan, you get 20% off your first 4 Uber rides in Dubai. So keep that in mind, everyone that's out there. It's a great deal. Highly recommend doing that. I mean, we took one ride where we went from the City Walk Mall over to the Dubai Mall after we had done Green Planet and HubZero and the stuff that was there. And, you know, using Uber, the taxi ride was legit $6. I mean, taxis are pretty cheap out there.
That's what I was going to say.
If you're, and there's a lot of them.
If you're going to, so when I hear taking a taxi everywhere, I just start thinking dollar signs. So if like when you're going out to Dubai Parks and Resorts, is that like a $30 cab ride or Uber, or is that like $100?
Yeah, you'd be looking from like Dubai Airport. You'd probably be looking at like a $30 cab ride from there.
Gotcha. And so what about, I know there's a lot more to do, and we're going to kind of touch on some of the smaller stuff here in a second, but if you're going out there for parks and you're kind of doing like a week of just, hitting these big guys here, where do you base yourself? Do you base yourself in Dubai proper, like in the downtown area for a few days and then move down to Abu Dhabi, or do you try to just base one location? How did you guys kind of do it?
I would suggest, and this is what I did the first time I was there, and oh wow, Doug Jones won.
Yep.
I'll be damned.
I know. They just Fox called it, CNN called it, AP just called it. I was going to jump in and mention it, but just to give everyone an idea of when we're recording this.
What a world. God bless Alabama.
Yeah.
You're allowed to stay in the union now. No, so what I would suggest is when you do the Dubai stuff, stay in Dubai. I would say the area that's over by Mall of the Emirates would probably be the most convenient for you at that stage, because you'd be about 10 to 15 minutes away from Atlantis and Wild Wadi, and you'd be about 20 minutes from Dubai Parks and Resorts and from IMG and Global Village. IMG and Global Village, you can see one from the other. The problem is that the problem with Dubai and the Emirates and the Middle East in general is that there's no sort of real urban planning. So there's no direct way to get from one to the other.
Reminds me of Orlando.
Go the opposite direction from Global Village, get on another freeway, go north on that freeway, U-turn off that freeway, go back on the freeway you were just on, and then take like an exit seemingly way far away from Global Village, and then like scoot back to it. And that's the way it is to get on everything there. But I would basically suggest, do that. If you can stay at Dubai Parks and Resorts, Lapida's pretty nice. We did have some issues in our room with cold water constantly coming out of the shower, which they fixed briefly, and then it went back to cold water instead of hot. But, as a Marriott Gold member, we got an upgrade to like a full suite with 2 balconies, and room service there is really nice. You get a free breakfast if you're an elite member. I think everybody at this point probably gets a free breakfast, actually. And you get free entry into the parks when you stay at Lapita with the basically fast pass access, kind of like what Universal does with Universal Express. Mm-hmm. You may not necessarily need to use it very often, but they're only running one train on pretty much everything. So if a bunch of Indian school groups come in, which happened to us on the Thursday when we were there, and you get a 25-minute wait of people just shoving each other in the line at Capital Bullet Train, you get to go right past them and get on the ride. So it's nice to have for situations like that.
Interesting. And then one other kind of like trip planning question I had before we like maybe jump into some smaller stuff is pricing. So is when you compare to like maybe some like other parks, what's kind of like the going rate to get into one of these parks, or at least the rate you kind of pay like after maybe finding discounts? And kind of like also for hotels, I think, I'm used to hearing about the Big Palm Hotel. That's like $2,000 a night. But when you're staying at like these Marriotts, are we talking is it like 150 or is it like 400 a night, something crazy? Kind of like what kind of prices am I looking at?
Sure. So a couple items here that I think are really important if you're interested in going to the UAE. The number one thing that you should do, aside from getting a SIM card, is get a copy of the Entertainer book or the Entertainer app for your phone. It's just like the entertainment book in the US. It's more expensive, but the number of discounts that are available to you with it is phenomenal. It's totally worth every single penny. Like, I think we paid, because we got one, a 2017 book, like at the very end of 2017, so we paid like $60 for the one for Abu Dhabi, but we were getting buy one, get one free for like every meal, which was huge at our hotel. We were staying during the race weekend. We had 3 nights at the Aloft Abu Dhabi, which is like about the nicest Aloft imaginable. And that was a category 2 under Starwood. So rather than paying $300 a night during race weekend, we paid 3,000 points a night, which is really good. Especially for Starwood, especially for like basically a 4.5-star level U.S. hotel. And, breakfast buffets are big out there. Usually they'll charge you, if you're an individual, you're looking at probably spending about $30 for a breakfast buffet at a hotel.
Ouch.
If you have two people and you get buy one, get one free for the breakfast buffet, it takes it down a lot. And it becomes much more manageable. And the entertainer book is good for just about every major hotel there and their buffet, whether it's Yaz Viceroy down to the Aloft. So a lot of the fast food and the major dining locations that are in places like Yaz Mall or the other malls like Marina Mall or just throughout the city use the entertainer book. It is the entertainer book or entertainer app. And I like I said, I can't say enough good things about it for that alone. But if you're a theme park guy, as you and I are, the entertainer app is a necessity. The entertainer app has buy one, get one free tickets for Yaz Water World, Wild Wadi, and Ferrari World.
Holy crap.
And also for Green Planet, and if you get the Dubai version, and HubZero. And if you do the credit whoring type stuff in places like Sparky's and Fun City, you can get deals where you buy like 30 dirham and you get an additional, or it's like 50 dirham and you get another 50 dirham free. So once you get one of those cards, you can use them at any of the other locations. So it's another huge, huge plus. So entertainer book all the way. Once you do that, the price of the parks is going to drop pretty significantly for you, down to probably about $40 a head. Most of the major theme parks in the UAE are generally around, like the biggest parks like Atlantis, Ferrari World, like you're probably looking at spending about like somewhere in the $60 to $80 range. IMG might be slightly lower than that. And then the FECs, Family Entertainment Centers, like the mall coasters, Global Village are pretty cheap. Taxis aren't that bad. The biggest things that are going to kill you are if you eat at the hotels a lot. Fast food at the malls and around town is pretty cheap in the UAE. It's at least reasonably priced. And then, like I said, taxis aren't really that bad as long as you don't get killed by surge pricing, especially in Dubai. I'm trying to think like what would be a massive. Oh, drinking. If you want to drink alcohol, it's expensive because it's very limited to get. Entertainer book again offers you some discounts on that. We could have shared, Zane and I, like a bucket of Soul beer at the Aloft bar for like 150 dirham, but we were like, I'm not sure about Mexican cerveza right now, especially here. Like I don't know how long it's been here. Yeah, that would be. I would say if you have a second person with you, that's the big thing. If you're going solo, then it's going to be more expensive. Just it is. But if you have two people, then you can bring the price down to be very comparable to something like a trip to Orlando, in all honesty. I know that sounds ridiculous because of how expensive the airfare is. Or if you live in Orlando, it's probably comparable to going to somewhere like Southern California because you pay so much to get into the Disney parks and into the Universal parks, and there's such a time commitment that's involved because there's so much waiting. The price of the lodging is generally a lot more. Lodging prices for like a 4-star level hotel, which you really don't want to go below, you can get that for $100, $150 a night, no problem. High level 5-star hotels, like the kind that have wiki pages, $250 to $300 a night, unless it's peak season, like there's some sort of major event going on, like the Grand Prix of Abu Dhabi. The Burj Al Arab usually goes for like $2,000 a night, and if you want to do that, you can. But you can stay in a nice suite over at Atlantis and get free water park access for $250. So it's up to you. Everyone still here?
Yep,
Yeah,
I'm here. Everything went quiet for a second.
Yeah, I think my internet like flushed out or something. So
Yeah.
we're still here.
Thanks, Skype.
Okay.
Ugh.
All right. So do we want to hear some stories? And, some craziness.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
hear some
because
stories. Let's close out with some stories.
Because I think if for any of us who follow you on Twitter, some of your messages were just absolutely hilarious. You're like you tweeted out stuff like, if I told the stories, people wouldn't believe me. So let's hear these stories and we'll see if we believe you or not.
All right. So when we arrived in Abu Dhabi, for the first few days, we actually had a rental car, and we got what did we get? It was like a Nissan Tita or something like that. It wasn't anything really good. But it was basically just like a sufficient vehicle to get us around. And that was when I learned that in the Middle East, nobody refills the car when they bring it back. Like, the way it works is like, you just have to bring back the car with roughly as much gas as you started. So the car that I was given had a quarter tank of gas left in it. And we were like, are you serious? A quarter tank? And they're like, yeah, just bring it back with a quarter tank and you'll be fine. I was like, there's no way. Come on, man. So we go out, we drop our stuff off at the hotel, and we go to Yas Mall to go park. This is Friday of Grand Prix weekend because we wanted to go check out the track. We wanted to go to Ferrari World, meet with Zane, blah, blah, blah. And we're driving around, and I've got a parking tag. Like, I'm supposed to have parking as part of my ticket passes to the race at Yas Mall, and the parking was completely full, which was really irritating. And so it took us like an hour to find a parking space. And in the interim of trying to find a parking space, we were led to an open space by these, let's say, security guys, but they basically have these parking guys that are all over the shopping malls in the UAE and Oman. And like, if you go and you go them, like, they will wash your car if you tip them. Not that I needed it because it was a rental. I didn't care what happened to the rental, but these are the things that they do, and they like try to guide you to open spaces. So they tried to guide me to the space that was kind of small, and I hit the car that was parked there, and basically, like, I ended up like trading my brand new phone number that I got with this like Kenyan dude that was working like, you know, detailing cars in the parking lot. He's like, we'll take care of you. If it's an Emirati, we know how to talk with them. And so, like, the whole rest of the time, I'm, like, waiting to get a phone call from this angry Emirati for rear-ending his car and scratching the bumper. And my car already had scratches on, like, every bumper, so I knew I could probably get away with it. And, like, the whole day, like, it was in the back of my mind. And honestly, that was probably also a reason why we skipped J. Cole, was because then I could go ride stuff at Ferrari World, and then we could get in the car and hopefully just skedaddle before anybody noticed anything. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. Like, we got out of there, and nobody ever called me on my phone. Nobody ever texted me. None of that. So I got away with it. And they looked over my car at the Dollar rental car. Was it Dollar? No, it was Avis. Was it Avis? Actually, I don't even know who it was. Oh, it was Europe Car. Europe Car is where I had the car through, because there's no national locations over there. I usually get national. And yeah, they looked over the car like, yeah, everything's fine. I'm great. That's wonderful. So then the next day, you know, we went back to Ferrari World and just banged out a bunch of stuff in the morning, got a bunch of rides on Flying Aces and the dark ride and stuff. And we went over with Zane to Funworks, which is this family entertainment center that's inside the mall. So, like, the mall already has a theme park physically attached to it, but also has a mall coaster anyways, which is really weird interpark, or it's like IE Park or Interpark built it. That's this, like, it's just like a kiddie oval kind of ride, but it launches and the ride like drifts around, like the cars kind of unhinge and spin slightly. It's a strange ride. It has OTSRs. We played a bunch of crappy arcade games, and then we went over to the racetrack and we walked over there. There's a bus that takes you over the racetrack as well, as we were going for qualifying, and we walked after we figured out how short of a walk it was. It was like a 15-minute walk from Ferrari World. And just as we were arriving to the grandstand where Zane was going to go into his entrance, then we were going to go to ours, Zane tripped over a piece of metal pipe that was like holding up a fence and hurt himself. And he's like, my arm really hurts bad, guys. And we're like, oh, man, we'll talk to you in a few. So, you know, we're messaging him back and forth during qualifying, and then he like stopped messaging back. We told him, like, after qualifying's over and there was going to be a GP2 or Formula 2 race, we'll go meet him about 8 o'clock or so outside his entrance. So the race ended. We were out there at like 7:45, 8 o'clock, 8:05, and we're like, Zane's not messaging back. And I'm looking at the first aid station that's over there. It's like right under where he got in at entrance G on the West Grandstand. And so I walk in. I'm like, would you happen to have seen a Zane barefoot by any chance? And they're like, who? What? I'm like, Zane barefoot. Like, oh yeah, him. He's at the hospital. We're like, oh, that's bad. So Meredith and I are just like walking back to the car. We're like, so what do we do? Like, we've hung out with Zane and he's cool, but like, are we cool enough that we have to go to the hospital to go see Zane? because they think he fractured something. We're like, I don't know.
You're like, I'm on vacation. Do I give up my vacation?
That's right now. I'm like, you know what? Zane will message us, and we're like, do we want to go see Mumford and Sons now? We're like, no. Like Zane doesn't care. Zane wanted to see Mumford and Sons, but he's at the hospital apparently. And I'm not like a huge Mumford and Sons fan. Like, I guess I could have gone to see that. It was free with my ticket. And so we skipped Mumford and Sons, and then we just went back to the hotel, and we were like, this is crazy. So Zane, the next day, he actually, I think we messaged a little bit that night. Like, they sent him to a field hospital that was run by the military that was like filled with drunks. And then they like dispatched him to a real hospital to get like better x-rays. But there was some sort of like hang up with like Zane's insurance. They just like shipped him back to the hotel with like a sling. They're like, hopefully this will work for you. And he just had to like go back, get a bunch of Advil and enjoy them. And eventually he was okay. But we were going to go to Yaz Waterworld on Sunday morning. We skipped that. Meredith and I went and rode Formula Rosa instead and did some stuff. And then we went to the race, which was great. The Formula One races are a blast. It's nothing like going to see NASCAR. I mean, it's like a totally different crowd, which makes sense because you look at the manufacturers that are involved in NASCAR. It's like Ford, Chevrolet, Toyota. You see the manufacturers in Formula One. It's Ferrari, Mercedes-Benz, Alfa Romeo, stuff like that. Like it's just quantitatively higher class of everything. The races are shorter. The flyover that took place, they had an A380 that flew directly over our stand. And behind it were like the military flight team for the UAE, and they were flying in, like 5 guys were flying in formation, like a couple guys were spiraling around them. It was amazing.
I saw the video of that was awesome.
It was so cool. Race was fun. We were in a great passing zone, so we got to see what action basically took place on the track. Tons of pyrotechnics and fireworks afterwards. We saw a couple songs of Pink because she was playing at the arena. And,
I know.
Random.
You said something about how like she had to change her lyrics then on
pauses. Like she wasn't singing all of her lyrics. Like she couldn't refer maybe to Mercedes-Benz because she was inside of Ferrari World. That like things like that is what I was guessing, but I'm not certain. It seemed like
Weird.
Either she was intentionally omitting lyrics or she forgot the lyrics to like her most popular songs. It was one of the two. Either way, like I'm not a big Pink fan, and I was surprised by how many people messaged me on Twitter being like, "What do you mean you don't like Pink? Pink's great." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Are you people? I don't know you. I don't know any of these people that love Pink so much." Monday, before we got on the cruise ship, I forgot exactly what we did. We tried to go to the Sparky's location. We were just driving around, like just doing dumb stuff, trying to kill some time. And we ran across a closed mall coaster in Abu Dhabi before we went to the port. Oman, I want to talk about Oman. Oman is amazing. Mm-hmm. Oman is an incredible, incredible place. We reported overnight in Muscat. I rented a car from an Avis location at the Intercontinental. I actually just got this hammered out today. They lost the key that I returned to the front desk.
Whoops.
The place was closed on that Thursday. Like, apparently the Avis is just closed on Thursdays. I don't know why, but it just is. So I returned to the front desk, and they lost the key for like 2 weeks, and I ended up having to get engaged with a bunch of people at IHG, and then eventually, magically, the key was found. So they did not charge me 150 rial for that. But we did get screwed a little bit on our cab ride out there. Actually screwed a lot. They charged us like 30 rial for a cab ride, when it should have been like 10 at most. But having the rental car, we had a 4Runner, so we were able to get and drive on some pretty rough roads. The first thing that we did is we went to Phantasmo, which is this new FEC inside of the Oman Avenues Mall. It's a really nice FEC. It's got a good size, like, family coaster with a couple lift hills on it, which I think is an IE Park ride. And then there's a SBF spinning coaster as well, called like Twizzler. But when we were in there, we were basically like the first people to ever get to that FEC with the stuff running. Like nobody's been there yet with everything operating. It's still listed as unknown, the ride that's known as actually roller coaster on our seat. So I have to get that fixed. Like nobody's been on it yet. So we were in there, and Zane, my wife, and I were riding Twizzler, and we look up, and on the floor above us, there's like something about a VR attraction. Like, what is that? So we go up to the third floor of this mall, and next to the food court is this, it's like a commercial, piece of mall real estate. And inside is like a KUKA arm sort of thing with 4 seats on the end of it. And they put an Oculus Rift over you. And, you watch a film while the arm does its thing. And I think the arm and the film were both like from Turkey. So we did like a Turkish virtual reality ride. There was like 3 real in a mall. I got my SIM chip, which is good because I was having issues with Google Maps. Then we went to Photon World Fantasia, which is not probably the worst of the mall parks that we went to. After that, we went to the Oman National Museum, which just opened last year and is great. We also went to we visited the grounds of the Sultan's Palace in Oman, which is basically right across the street from the National Museum. Also really, really beautiful. Oman as a whole is very different looking than Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which are basically flat desert. It's very mountainous, very craggy, lots of canyons, lots of scraggly trees. It looks a lot more like Utah or Nevada, but it's really cool. Then we made our trip over to Maraland, which is Oman's premier outdoor amusement facility, and that was probably the scariest.
Now, when you say premier outdoor facility, I'm sure you're putting that in quotations.
I mean, it's like the only. There's 2. There's actually another one, and I forgot to put it on the list because it didn't have a coaster, and I'll briefly mention that one too in a second. But Maraland is the oldest, maybe, and it's definitely the biggest, and the rides are terrifying. There's a roller coaster that was there, which I knew I wasn't going to ride it. It's been down for almost 2 years. It was the last Schwarzkopf Catapult, which is this weird shuttle loop coaster that was built by Schwarzkopf that has a tire drive, launch system. And the tire launch goes all the way up into the loop. And you can see the axles running along the loop's loop track, spine. Something happened to it, and it broke down very specifically between 2 dates in 2016, has never moved again. And it's covered in dust. It looks terrible. I mean, it looks really bad. They have a Zyklon there, which I think was called Typhoon, and that never operated for us either. We tried to ride it a couple times when we were there, and they were like, nope, not open, not open. It never moved. It was lit up, but nothing happened. We did ride the Wacky Worm. I think it was called, it might have been Nissi Coaster, or maybe it was Big Apple or something. It was terrible. I think that was the second ride of the day that Zane got in it and put down his lap bar, and the lap bar didn't work, and they just dispatched it anyways. That was happened at Photon World Fantasia. It didn't come down. He's like, it's not working. And I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. And then they just start the lift anyways, and along we went. That park, I probably should have worried. When we went around the second loop on that ride, I just pushed the lap bar forward and went, ta-da! There's all sorts of broken pieces on the ground around it. It looked really bad. Because we didn't get on any other coasters, we rode other stuff. So they have a couple of flat rides that are really unique. One is a Tagada, which Zane had never seen before. And it's a pretty beat-ass Tagada. Tagadas on their wiki basically describe them as death machines. That cause injuries. Basically, it's I'm trying to think. If you look at a picture, if you just search Tagada, Tagada, and you see a picture of it, you'll understand why. It's basically like a bowl on a platform, and there's seats facing inward around the edge of the bowl, and you just sit on the seat. There's no restraint, and the thing spins, and then it starts bouncing up in the air, and it just launches you. It just launches you up, and people try to stand up in the middle of it and walk around and dance. And apparently, what ends up happening is usually those people just get propelled clean out of the vehicle on a regular basis in Europe, and all sorts of broken arms and legs and elbows and stuff like that. We were just getting thrown around like crazy on that thing. We had a 5-minute cycle, and we were just laughing up a storm. Then there's also a very rare, what they call video telecombat ride. These were produced in the 1980s. Telecombats are they're kind of like a satellite jets type ride, or basically like a Dumbo type ride, except you can turn the vehicle all the way around 360 degrees, and there's a trigger button, there's a fire button, and if you can shoot down the other like things in the air. So if you hit somebody, it can register that as a hit, and then they'll drop down all the way to the bottom, and they have to come back up. So that didn't do any of the things it was supposed to do, and we thought that the pneumatics broke, and it was going to kill us. And then after we thought that was going to kill us, we all rode the Ferris wheel. My wife had skipped on those 2 flat rides. The Tagada actually specifically says that you can't have mixed gender on it. You're only allowed to have men or only women because they might touch each other. And we rode the Ferris wheel together, and that was a bad idea. We heard lots of pings and sounds of metal that didn't sound right, and we were afraid that we would die. I don't usually get afraid at amusement parks, but that one, I was actually afraid. That was probably the least safe amusement park I can recall being to in a long time, maybe ever. The grounds of that park has like an abandoned fountain show. There's a big waterfall that was like artificially made. It's actually kind of a nice park area. That's also when we learned that Oman is actually cheap. Like we got a snack for like $2. We also ate at this themed restaurant called The Jungle that was there at the same park. And that's where I had camel, which is bad. Don't eat camel. The nastiest meat. I would not recommend it. And we also styled in terms of like how fat Americans we were because we ate so much meat, Zane and I. Then we drove and we went way further than anybody on the cruise ship was going out. About 2.5 hours south into the interior of Oman, and saw a bunch of crazy forts, and it was gnarly. It was really gnarly. I would highly recommend. And about my dagger, I got my Omani dagger. That was a really big item for me. After we went to Oman, and we went to Surbani Yaz, which is this island. It's basically kind of like an island, like a private island now for cruise ships. The way it's set up, which you tender into it. There's a wildlife preserve, so you can see cheetahs, and about 10 billion antelope are living out there. There was a water play area, like an inflatable play set that was out there in the water, which was free for anyone to use. And my wife and I and Zane ruined it. We got on part of it, and it started to deflate, and then the air picked it up and flipped the entire thing over with us on it.
No, that's fantastic.
And people were flying everywhere. That was a thing. Oh, another thing about Oman. Okay, so going back really quickly to Muscat. So we dropped the car off at the hotel, and I give them the keys, which they obviously lost, and I was threatened with like a huge fine. So then we go to Trader Vic's, which is located at the Intercontinental, because I was like, let's go to a tiki bar. And I tried to look online because I knew it was the Prophet's birthday. It was like Prophet Muhammad's birthday. So a lot of places were going dry in the UAE, but I couldn't find anything about that in Oman. And of course, Trader Vic's was dry that day. So no tiki drinks.
No.
So no, it gets better. So Trader Vic's is upscale there. So we walk in, and of course, Zane's wearing pants, and my wife is wearing pants, and I'm wearing cargo shorts. And I'm like, hey, is it okay if I wear cargo shorts? And the guy's like, no, it's not okay. Actually, you need to come with me. And I'm like, okay. So I get led to this room, which is like a banquet room. And by the way, there's only like 2 people eating in this restaurant, probably because it's dry and you can't get a fucking tiki drink. And he's like, you have to put on pants. And so they have a bunch of pants sitting on this like cabinet, and he like leaves the room, and I just pick the biggest pair of pants, just put them over my shorts. And we go in and we sit down, and we're like, okay, this was a mistake immediately. Like we should not have, I should have just turned around and we should have left. And I'm so sorry to everybody. And we ended up just getting like a couple appetizers, which we shared. And they're like, so are you guys ready for your entrees? We're like, absolutely not. We're going to go ahead and get a check now. We still paid. It was still like $60-something for 3 appetizers.
Oh, jeez.
And some water to share. And we were just like, you know what? If we're going to eat real food, we might as well just eat on the ship because it's free at that point. And we can get back to the ship before our late seating dining at 8:30. So we're leaving the Trader Vic's, and as we get, I'm like, I need to get out of the pants. So I go to the bathroom, I take the pants off, I come out, and the person that was at the desk, like greeting people, is not there. There's nobody there at the entrance. So we're like, what should I do with the pants? We're just like, look at each other. I'm like, I just threw them on a chair and we ran out the door. And so we go to the doorman and we're like, we need a taxi cab. So he's like, okay, he calls around a taxi, and the taxi guy gets up there. And remember, like the previous day, we had been charged 30 rial, 10 rial a person to get out of the port. So the dude pulls up and he's like, hey, what's going on, guys? Like, we want to go to the cruise port. Like, it's not Port Zayed or Port Cubos, whatever it was called there. And he's like, we're like, how much is it? And he's like, how much do you want to pay? We're like, I don't know, how much is it? He's like, how about 6? I'm like, oh, like 6 rial for everybody? He's like, yeah. Like, okay. So we get in, we start driving, and he's like, and he starts like quizzing us about like what we're doing. He's like, do you guys like to drink? And we're like, yeah, I like to drink. I enjoy an alcoholic beverage. And he's like, drinking is bad. Drinking's terrible for you, man. The Prophet is against drinking. We're like, this is weird. He's like, what about smoking hashish? We're like, not right now, not here. And we just like all get really quiet. He's like, who wants to listen to some music? And we're like, yeah, we can listen to some music. So he puts on Bob Marley. He's driving the bat out of hell. He's like swerving around traffic, and we're just like, it's crazy driving. And we're listening to No Woman, No Cry at like full blast in this taxi cab. And as we get close to the port, like Zane is up in the front, my wife and I are in the back, and Zane's like, look at this dude. And he's like, so hashish, is it like common around here? And the guy's like, yeah, it's pretty common around here. So Zane got his phone number before we left for next time we're in Oman. And I was like, dude, like, I was afraid to say anything because I'm like, was he a cop? He's like, dude, his eyes were so bloodshot. Like, clearly that's the guy you need to meet up with next time. Whoever our taxi cab driver was in Muscat, he was a hero. Let's see, what else here? What else do we have? Green Planet Dubai is kind of interesting. It's like this, it's kind of like the rainforest thing at the Cleveland Zoo, but it costs like $30 to get into. It's nice. There's a lot of malls. They're everywhere, and there's a lot of amusement rides inside of them. The ones that I would probably point out as being specifically really interesting, Antics Land, which is a great name, Antics Land, in Sharjah. It has a steel roller coaster. It's actually it's themed. I don't know if I would say well themed, but it's themed. The roller coaster is apparently made by some South African company whose name has been lost to antiquity. There's a suspended monorail ride that has gun holsters in it, but no guns. And it's themed to Aladdin, except it's not Aladdin. He's named Antic. And there's like animatronic monkeys during the ride who are apparently mischievous. I assume you probably used to shoot at them at some point, but now you don't shoot at them anymore. There's also a dark ride, which was a interactive shooting dark ride. I don't know who made it. It was like the smallest interactive dark ride I've ever seen. It went through like 3 rooms. The car was round, and it sat 4 people. So it was like, basically, I'm trying to think like how, if you imagine like you each have a quadrant of the car and you're facing out, right? That's the way the seating was. It's very weird to try and explain it. And it was all physical effects, so that was good. So automatically Disney fans would apparently love it. It was there. It was strange. Adventureland in Sharjah, which was probably the best FAC that we went to, had a Zamperla motorbike coaster that had a tire lift hill. I think it's the only one of those rides that has a lift hill period in the world. It was quite good, and a couple of powered coasters that were fun. Sakura Public Park. We did 7 parks / malls in a single day, my wife and I, with a rental car from Dubai, which was also like a disaster. So we were supposed to pick up the rental car at the 4 Points by Sheraton in downtown Dubai because it was really close to the port. So it was a cheap taxi ride to get there. And they sent the driver with our car, because apparently there's not actually a desk or cars at the 4 Points. They're just supposed to like show up with one. They sent him to the wrong hotel, and he was going to be taking like an hour to get to where we were. So then we just taxied over to Avis at the airport instead, and then got a car there. So I ended up like in an argument with Abdullah, the driver, over the phone because he went to the wrong hotel, and he was like angry at me because he screwed up. But we got a car, and then we drove it everywhere. We were like driving through like sand dunes were building up on the freeways between Ras Al Khaimah and Fujairah. It was like the weirdest scene ever. All the freeways are out, like when you get outside of Dubai and Abu Dhabi, like it gets weird. Like there's camel farms, and like the freeways, there's just like, you'll come across like these settlements that exist on these freeways, and it's just like a bunch of like cell phone stores and convenience stores and like a couple of really ratty looking restaurants, just like surrounded by sand. And it's I won't say it's terrifying, but it's just it's such a weird, like incredibly foreign looking thing. There's nothing that I can compare it to in America. It'd be like if I don't even know what it looks like. It looks like what you're like. This isn't the Middle East when you're in Dubai, and then when you get out to that stuff, you're in the Middle East. Like you're on the Arabian Peninsula. There's no question anymore. We went to this place called Sac Republic Park. So Google Maps had the freeway as being closed that led to the direct entrance to it. So it took us on this weird back way, and we ended up in like people's backyards, and we were like trying to dodge like dogs that were like unleashed and running around, and camels. Like I wish I was making this stuff up, but like we were like running over ruts in like a crappy 2-wheel drive compact car, and we finally get to the entrance, and we got to like the back entrance of Sac Republic Park, and we were the only guy there, and park there was some sort of old boat ride in this huge pond, and then this all got scrapped and dried out, and it was basically just like a scrapyard of old rides and coin operated stuff all over the ground. And then we got to the rides, and they were run by Happy Fun, which is a carnival company out there, and it was not quite as sketchy, but it was pretty sketchy. We also did Hilly Fun City in Al Ain, which is the other major city in Abu Dhabi, and where like all of the soccer stadiums are in pretty much the country. And that place is half abandoned. They walled off half of it, like in the 1990s, and it just rots behind the wall. The Hilly Mouse, which is a wacky worm crossbred with a Zyklon that I've never seen anything like it before, was closed, and all we were able to ride was a Zamperla spinning mouse. The Louvre Abu Dhabi just opened up last month, and it's a pretty cool museum. It's got some nice pieces in it, and I lost my my DSLR camera in there, I guess, maybe, or possibly in the cab ride back, or it was swiped from my hotel room sometime in like the 4 hours between the time we arrived there and the time that I discovered my camera was missing. So I lost all my pictures, pretty much. Which is a bummer.
Damn.
But it's good that Zane was around for pretty much everything, because I can just copy his stuff and pretend it's mine. And yeah, that's the majority of it. And you know, it was a thing that happened. I bought cologne. I bought Arabian cologne. I bought a ton of T-shirts from various amusement parks. I bought a dagger, which was fun to bring back on the ship. To be like, here's my knife that I acquired that has silver in the holster. It's very nice. And yeah, I still didn't get to do everything that I wanted to do, because we drove back from Al Ain at night, like at 11 p.m. I didn't get a chance to see whether or not the Universal gates were still in existence on the edge of Dubai from the failed Universal Studios development.
That's
Everything I heard there, it's still there.
That's what I've heard. Zane said that he heard that it was torn down, but I have a hard time believing it, because nothing disappears out there. Nothing. But Stargate, which is this amusement park that closed like 3 years ago, you can still see it like in the shadow of the Dubai Gate building that is finally getting done after 10 years. Queen Elizabeth II is sitting in Abu Dhabi's port, and they're finally going to open it as a hotel/museum ship after a decade of sitting there in dry dock. So stuff takes its time. I mean, it's not even like island time in the Caribbean. It's like something slower than that. Like Arabian time, like talk about sands in the hourglass, like sands in like a gigantic hourglass that like lasts for decades. Like it takes time for stuff to occur. Yeah, the malls were a thing. Food was a thing. Lots of incredible architecture. Lots of crazy cab rides. Yeah, it was a trip, man.
So, a couple more trip planning questions, I guess.
Sure.
I mean, lately, there's been like the UK soccer coach and a few other like kind of publicized incidents in Dubai, and I mean, I kind of chalk that up to probably just the media jumping on a couple things, make good headlines. But when you're there, I mean, obviously, when you travel, you got to kind of respect the customs. That's a given. But kind of from a planning process, if someone's planning to go to Dubai, how much do they need to kind of read up on the culture to make sure that they don't get themselves in too much trouble, or is that just kind of really overplayed by the media? It's
so overplayed by the media. There's somebody, and we didn't get a chance to meet up with Dave when we were out there, but Dave's wife works for the UK consulate, and we got some inside baseball about, there was a famous incident where a couple people were arrested for having sex on a beach in Dubai a few years ago.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got like the inside story of what happened with that. And it was like, essentially, those people should have gotten off and not had any problems, but they chose to go the wrong path. Like, if you're caught having sex on a beach and the cops stop you and tell you to leave, you should do that. You should not re-engage in sexual activity and then throw your shoes at the cop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, if you did that here, you'd be arrested too. It's like, I remember reading when I was traveling to South America once, someone's like, oh my gosh, read this story. And someone's like, I went to the beach and left $100 bill in my shoe and I came back and someone stole it. Can you believe that? And I was like, yeah, that would happen on Daytona Beach too. Like what do you
honestly,
expect?
The chance you're going to get mugged in Dubai or Abu Dhabi is so minimal. Like, my camera, if it got stolen, it was stolen on the cruise ship, right? Like, it was not stolen by the cabbie. Like, I would have left in the cab. Or I left it at the Louvre by accident, and maybe it will turn up and I'll get it back. So, nobody's going to mug you. Like, who's going to mug you? Like, everybody is there on a work visa. If they're not there on a work visa, that they're going to get deported, like, as soon as they find them. It just doesn't operate that way. Like, basically, as long as you don't do anything incredibly stupid, like if you get like really tore up and you step on somebody's tobe or abaya, or like shove an Emirati, like if you do something objectively retarded like that, like completely dumb, like unimaginably stupid, then yeah, you're gonna end up paying the price for it. Just don't do anything like that. Just act like an average, normal human being. If you're not capable of acting like a normal human being, then don't go to the UAE. Because, yeah, you'll get arrested, and you'll become an example on CNN.
As they blow the story out of proportion.
Yeah, like Zane and I have obviously done all sorts of wacky things on our own independent levels, and we both returned to the United States A-okay. Nothing happened to us. Yeah. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about. No, who cares? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
You're just a random guy. Like, you're not. We're just people. We're just tourists. We're nothing special. I don't know. Like, yeah, there's nothing to be afraid of. Literally nothing. Yeah. It's the least terrifying country probably in the world.
What about the flight over there? I know from Orlando, if I ever go, I'll probably be on Emirates Airlines, which would be awesome. But that's like a 16, 17-hour beast of a flight. How did you kind of get over there? Did you fly direct from somewhere here on the North American continent, or kind of bounce around through Europe?
So the two times I've gone through Chicago. So the first time I actually drove to Chicago and flew Emirates to Dubai. This time, my wife and I flew from Grand Rapids to Chicago and then connected and took Etihad to Abu Dhabi. I would say, comparing coach class to coach class, which is what we flew on Emirates and Etihad, Emirates is the superior airline, hands down. Like, you get a better amenity kit. The ICE system is better than the system that's in place on Etihad. I like the food better on the flight that we had with Emirates between the United States and Dubai than I got the food on Etihad for those same legs. But the food was passable on both, for sure. But yeah, I would take that in a second. And the flight was probably, it's like a 14-hour flight from Dubai. It's a little bit longer. It was like, I think the flight from Dubai to Chicago was 15 and a half hours. We took that a couple of years ago. But when you've got a billion movies to watch,
yeah,
and if you sit in the back of the plane, if you're taking the 777 extended, I think those 200s or 300 ERs, there's a couple rows of two in the back, which are a solo or a couple for sure, like we are. And, we're not connecting there in Dubai to get to our next flight to go to Islamabad. So it's not really a big issue for us to be at the back of the plane because you have to wait for your luggage anyways, That's my attitude with it. And going through customs and immigration in Dubai is a cinch.
And now, isn't it one of the places like Canada where you actually clear U.S. customs in Dubai before coming back?
In Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
We did do that. That was it's okay. I mean, at the time, it was a pain because we had a 3:20 a.m. flight back home, and so we ended up having to get to the airport 3 hours before the flight. So we left Dubai Parks and Resorts at 11:30 p.m. Got there about 12:15. I got selected for special screening because I have an ethnic last name, and so it took me like an hour to get through everything. But there's food there, and it's not too bad. I also don't like Abu Dhabi's airport nearly as much as I like Dubai's. Dubai airport is much nicer than Abu Dhabi, for sure, hands down. But the one thing I will say too in defense of that is, if you go through Abu Dhabi, you can take a laptop with you, in your carry-on. If you don't, then you can't, based on the current rules. So if that's a deal breaker for you, then yeah, you got to fly Etihad. But for you, as long as you're willing to go with just a tablet or a cell phone, if that's all you need, you can check a laptop if you need it, then go Emirates all the way out of Orlando, because I like Emirates a lot more than Etihad. Emirates, along with Air New Zealand, those are like my top favorite airlines, and Etihad for me is not. It's not even. It's like at the same level or below of like Delta, honestly.
Ugh.
For intercontinental service.
So I think this is probably my last question, trip planning here, but kind of talking about like looking to the future. We were talking about some of these parks, seem to take forever to build. So when do you think you would go back? And like, when would you recommend like someone like myself? Like I'm really kind of looking forward to going, but it's like one of those things I look at, like the parks opening up. I'm like, I could go right now, have a blast. Could wait a year, go, and WB would open. Could wait 2 years. Six Flags may or may not be open. 4 or 5 years. SeaWorld. So it's like, I feel like every time where I like give myself, okay, I'm going to go in 2019 no matter what. Then all of a sudden, like something really awesome is announced for like the next year. So when do you think you're going to go back, and when would you kind of recommend, if people are looking to go now or wait? Does WB look that good that it's worth the wait? Kind of deal.
I think it depends on how much time you're planning to spend there. If you're looking at like a week, I wouldn't necessarily wait for WB, because there's so much stuff that's already there that's going to occupy your time. Like if you were to go next March, let's say, you could go to Global Village, IMG, HubZero, Green Planet. You can go to the Burj Khalifa. You can go to Dubai Parks. You can go to Iceland if you want to, up in RAK. You can go do some of the little parks. You can go to Sharjah. Sharjah is really very close to Dubai, honestly. So you can go to places like Adventureland and Antixland by taxi if you wanted to. You could go to the beach. You can go on a boat ride, on a dhow. You can take a day trip and go on a desert safari and go dune bashing in a four-wheel drive vehicle. You can go to Kasab, Oman, which is this weird outpost of Oman that's kind of separated from the rest of the country. Up at the very tip, it's where all the smugglers come in across the Persian Gulf to sell stuff from Iran. So it's pretty wacky out there, what I hear, but there's also like dolphin cruises and snorkeling up that way. There's a million things you can do now where I'd say, I would not necessarily wait for WB to open. Maybe I would consider waiting for Mission Ferrari to finally open up.
Yeah.
But that's, like I said, that's February, March. So that's coming up pretty shortly. So if you go in April, that's a really good time. You basically just want to make sure that you miss stuff like Eid Mubarak. You definitely don't want to be there in the middle of summer because summer's miserable. I mean, it's, however hot you think it is in Florida or Southern California, you're not prepared for, 139 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Nobody there is. Nobody there goes out in summertime. There's stuff that we didn't do on this trip that we did on the last trip. We didn't go to the Mall of Emirates this time. And you can go skiing there. So there's a million things to do. I would say go now. I personally am probably looking at 2020 right now to go back during the expo because I think at that point WB will be open. I don't see anything opening at IMG or Dubai Parks and Resorts in the next 3 years. It's going to incite me to go if anything opens at all, period. So, the stuff that'll be new for me will be the Expo, WB, still Atlantis, which I know is not going anywhere, and probably Iceland and whatever other mall coasters open up in the interim over the next 3 years. So, I'm excited to ride a bunch of really bad spinning and kiddie coasters.
I'm completely in the same camp as you, kind of at this point, it's the bigger the novelty, the crazier, the weirder it is, the better versus, necessarily going to like a Disney World or something like that. But I'm kind of in the mindset, I see Emirates, Orlando to Dubai, like it's gotten as low as I think like $720. So I've told myself like I'm planning on 2019, 2020 ish because I would really like to kind of go for Six Flags. I think that'd be fun. But I'm like, the second I see it dip below like 650 or around 600, especially if it goes below, I'm booking that like instantly. So
yeah, I totally think that's the way to go. I think if you try waiting for a gate to open, you run the real risk of it never opening because that's happened. Yeah. It's never opened. The coaster is still sitting in the sand over at the Dubai Autodrome. It'll never open. That coaster will never ever operate.
Yeah.
Universal Studios Dubai has had a gate open, but they built the gate, but nothing else was ever constructed. Things like that happen all the time. So you don't want to get in a position, I don't think, of sitting there waiting for a whole park to open because there's enough there already. You should just go and enjoy what's there now because there's always the possibility that, I would have loved to have gone on V12 at Ferrari World, but it was dead and gone by the time I got to Ferrari World. So, I kind of wish I went slightly earlier so I could have gone on that and gone to some of the really shady parks that Dubai had outside and Stargate because I never went to Stargate either. And had I gone earlier, maybe I could have gone and taken a flight over to Qatar before they ended up having any sort of relationship between those two countries. So I would say go sooner rather than later. Check it out, and then if you want to go back for a longer period of time, set your clock for 2020 and join the crowd.
Awesome.
Cool. We've been at this for 2 hours and 42 minutes now.
It's about right. It's what I expect.
Yeah. Which is what 20% of your overall flight time from Chicago to Dubai. So
exactly.
Basically, yeah.
In proportion, it's not that long.
Days. This is a 16-day trip, so we're compressing things a little bit here.
I kept watching your Twitter, and I was like, surely he's back, and I'm going to be seeing like you posting about your Michigan stuff, and like then all of a sudden like the next day it's like you're posting another photo from another park in the middle of the Middle East. I was like, oh, he's still over there.
Yeah, we left on Thanksgiving and we didn't get back until Sunday this week, the 10th. So that was a long trip. That was a long trip. My wife was ready to get to see the cats again. She was excited.
Alrighty then. I need to go do laundry. I feel grab the laundry out of the dryer. I started it up and I'm like, okay, and it was still damp, so that's been in there for a while. So, Alan, for everyone who's made it this far, where can they find you online at?
They can find me at Gods on Safari on Twitter and on Parkscope.net.
Cool. Yeah, you just posted a new article about regional theme parks, kind of a regional theme park 101, kind of the build up in the 60s and 70s of the regional theme park and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I'll do a short little series about those, and I may do a little bit of a companion written piece for this as well, just to kind of help people understand what to do if they want to travel to the Middle East a little bit more. But I hope the podcast was helpful.
Yeah. So my brain's totally gone now, and I'm so sleepy. So Andrew, where can we find you online at?
I am on Twitter at onlinehyde. That's HYDE, and I just talk theme parks and whatever else I feel like talking about. But yeah,
cool.
Come join the conversation.
You can find all of us at Parkscope. I'm at Parkscope Joe. Go leave us a review on iTunes, all that fun jazz. You know the general gist. So, thanks for sticking in for 2 hours and 45 minutes, or roughly speaking. I'm probably going to remove some silence and all that fun jazz. But we'll see you guys on the other side. Peace.